And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the return to the UKSimRacing community's Porsche Cup Season 6, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And tonight marks round 9 of 15 as the story continues after the first mid-season break, and we are here in France at the legendary Le Mans circuit, or to give it its full title, the Circuit des 24 Heures du Mans. And well, what better circuit to get proceedings back underway, given the fact that with 33 corners, extended straights and variable corner sequences, this is a circuit like no other when it comes to testing the reliability of machine. With over 75% of laps spent on full throttle, some major heavy braking zones, and of course major compressions in through the corner sequences that will test the suspension, it's all about keeping the car together and keeping your concentration high if you want to come home high on the grid come at the very end of the racing. But as our drivers get set to go racing today, of course it is a special round with there only being one race on the schedule rather than our standard two, and we'll break it all down and more in terms of how it play out and what the rules and regulations are for what is our one and only endurance special for the season. And well, let's get underway. But before we do, we'll also just take you through the fact that you are tuning live via the official UKSimRacing broadcast, and that's been brought to you on YouTube, of course, at UKSimRacing. On top of that as well, in the content booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain's Bit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we're bringing you all of your racing action tonight, indeed for the entirety of the series. And well, speaking of the series, let's take a look at the calendar thus far and what we still got lying in wait. Well, we started off, of course, back on the 23rd of March with rounds 1 and 2 taking place at Virginia International Raceway in the state of Virginia in the US of A. And there we've got proceedings underway in absolutely spectacular fashion with 2 races to be remembered. And in particular, perhaps the most memorable part of the feature race in round number 2 was the fact that in the silver class, it looked as though nobody wanted to win, with so many of our race leaders in the silver class falling off the circuit from start to finish. In rounds 3 and 4 that followed on the 30th of March, we made our way to Italy for the Monza Grand Prix circuit. And there, of course, the venerable words of Monza Turn 1 didn't quite catch out many of our drivers. In fact, most of our drivers were able to keep it clean and smooth from lap to lap, and well, Monza absolutely delivered when it came to battles on the brakes. Then winding forward to the 6th of April, we made our way to our third venue and the start of a Belgian doubleheader, which commenced at everybody's second favourite Belgian circuit, Circuit Zolder, the home of DTM, in rounds 5 and 6. And there we saw our drivers trying to steer clear of the raised curves and make sure not to get it wrong, but some found those curves a little bit too hard and high and ended up getting it wrong with the car going into the sky. And then in rounds 7 and 8, which followed, we made our way to perhaps the more notable Belgian circuit in terms of its popularity, and that was, of course, the Circuit des Spa-Francorchamps. And last time out, of course, it was battles of plenty. Perhaps the biggest name, however, on the scene in rounds 7 and 8 was Luke Andrews in the silver class, where the FR20 Sim Racing purple driver put in an absolutely dominable run in the class, and will he be able to continue that today after a week's break? Of course, with our first of 2 mid-season breaks, we return tonight for round 9 on the 27th of April, and after our running at Le Mans, we'll then be making our way to the United Kingdom for the 4th of May, and that'll be for rounds 10 and 11 at the Silverstone circuit. The United Kingdom's circuit, of course, with wide open space, will provide us for a very different calibre of racing compared to the circuits we've raced at so far, but then we'll have our second mid-season break week before returning for rounds 12 and 13 on the 18th of May, and we make our way all the way over to Japan for the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. And well, if you're looking for a circuit that puts everything to a test on a car and with regards to the driver, we'll ask for no other circuit than Suzuka, with 4 very unique sectors. And then we bring the season all the way to a close on the 25th of May with rounds 14 and 15, and that will be back in France at the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, or Magny-Cours as it's known in short. And that's going to be tight, it's going to be technical and highly twisty, and overtaking may be difficult, and putting a track position as the highest priority. But still, we've got plenty of racing to go as we make our way into the midway point. But as we make our way back onto circuit tonight, let's give you a reminder of how the championship standings stand after 8 rounds. And we start, of course, with the Drivers' Championship and the Gold class in particular. And we can see at the very top of the gold class is Alex Peregrina for Jotautas Racing, who leads the way by 11 points over Philipp Hammer from Team Germany. Peregrina has been the leader thus far over the course of the series, but his advantage has been slightly cut after a difficult day in Belgium at last time out. Conversely, Philipp Hammer is now starting to gain momentum, and what looked to be a very despairing start to the season compared to some of his peers is now being put to bed, and now he's back on form. Meanwhile, in P3, both of the leaders will need to be aware of the fact that they do have the Lithuanian from Over Limit Racing, Haroldas Jotautas, who is given hot pursuit there and only is a further 9 points off, and he feels as though he's in contention, and we would agree with him given the fact he's had 1 win so far this season, and he definitely wants another. Grebstad in P4 for Ignia Motorsport can't keep counted out either, in the fact that whilst he may not have been the absolutely outstanding driver in terms of taking all the headlines, his consistency has been absolutely critical in those 81 points, and could we see that consistency reap the rewards again tonight? Meanwhile in P5, Karen Willesey for Willesey Racing, also a hot shot when it comes to battling inside the top 5 on 75 points. They're over only a further 6 off, and well, he's also been prone to bringing home a few surprise results, and could he potentially bring home a win? Then in P6, a bit further back by a margin of 40 points, we have Ryan Walker for Satellite Racing, the driver with the defensive masterclass, of course. Whenever you see him at the front of the field, he digs in deep and absolutely puts down the barriers with regards to the car, making it as wide as possible. Perhaps a bit of bad luck in his championship campaign so far, and Walker will be looking to try and amend that tonight. But ahead of Emil Koopmans by 3 points, the Apex Misters driver there with absolutely blazing pace, but just not having the fortune to be able to bring home the points with the results, and therefore he's looking to try and bounce back. Samuel Casebrow for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand on 19 points there in P8, ahead of Avatar Races Ricardo Jimenez. And then we do have Corey Lazarus, the other Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, completing the top 10. Only P10 to Jimenez's P9 based on the result count, back with 2 on equal points. And then best of the rest there in P11, Giles Phillips of Phillips GP, another driver to watch out for, where he is able to spring a few surprise results, and he does have a lot of pace at his fingertips. P12, it's Alexander Wilfert, the other member of Team Germany, alongside Philipp Hammer. And Alexander Wilfert really has had some difficulty in the last few rounds, given instance which were not necessarily his fault, but being on the receiving end of those, and therefore he goes into tonight looking to try and have a cleaner day of racing. With Lee Holmes in P30, the 8 Tech Purple on 8 points, 4 clear of Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport. And then it's Chris Cole for DC Sim Racing and Rob Selby from Shelby Power Race Team who complete your standings. We then come on to the silver class, and whilst in the gold class we have a top 5 that have broken away in their entirety and are looking to try and keep it that way. For our silvers, it's all coming back together at the very top. Roxanne Marshall, our championship leader going into tonight, stands on 88 points to 24-hour punty people, but the advantage has been cut to 16 points to DC Sim Racing's David Biggerdike, with our second place driver continuing now to find his feet and put to bed the woes of the first 4 rounds. However, keep your eyes on the third place man Luke Andrews for FR20 Sim Racing Purple, in the fact of course double winner last time out by an absolutely dominating fashion in his class, and could he perhaps put a win in tonight to see him jump all the way up there to the very top. 1 point off him, Lewis Willesey for Tresla Motorsport, and to be fair, whilst Willesey has not been stealing headlines necessarily, he has been stealing hearts in the viewership and looking to try and bring home another great result, and he's 3 points clear of Jack Ward for Willesey Racing, who completes the top 5, and only just with Alistair Hatcher for A-Tech Tech Racing Team Sign a further point off. Wayne Vasson in P7 for FR20 Sim Racing, and he's on 43 points with an advantage that continues to grow over Sean Cranley Swash, the HW Racing driver, on 26 points, really demarking the second half of the field and their pursuit of the top half, with a 1 point advantage over Steve Hobbs at FR20 Sim Racing, and Sean Doby in at P10 there for Clicks Racing at 23 points, and only ahead of Glenn Humberstone, who's best of the rest there with 3 points of an advantage. Meanwhile, the A-Tech Tech Racing Team Purple driver of Humberstone will need to be wary. There's Craig Shield, the sister team driver for A-Tech Tech Team Cyan, in a hot pursuit against him, 7 points to the Delta. And then Craig Tiddleston a further point off for FR20 Sim Racing, with Liam Whittingham for Shell V-Power Race Team and Aaron Tresler for Tresler Motorsport, both on 11 points, but it's Whittingham ahead of Tresler based on result countback. We then come to P16, Steve Kershaw for Night and Day Racing, and he'll be looking to try and hold off Jason Mumford and Jack Isherwood, with Chris Eddersford and Joe Pinder completing at the top 20 for UKSimRacing and Indian Motorsports respectively, and then Tony Bradley completes the standings there in P21 on -1 point. We then come to our team standings meanwhile, and we can see here it's Avatar Racing who lead the way, albeit their advantage is being cut both in the Gold Championship and also in the Teams Championship, with Team Germany given hot pursuit. The gap has come down to 18 points, and could we see that gap continue to come down today? That is the question. Willesey Racing, meanwhile, in at P3 on 87 points. They're only ahead of Over Limit Racing based on result countback, and both teams are exchanging blows in this championship. And who's going to land a knockout punch today? That could be the question, to use the boxing analogy. Satellite Racing in P5 on 30 points. Likewise, trading places with Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, and only ahead based on result countback, with FR20 Sim Racing Purple in P7 and getting major points last time out Spa-Francorchamps, and looking to continue that run with their 3 point advantage over 24-hour punty people. And it's Phillips GP and A-Tech Tech Racing Team Purple complete the top 10, with Phillips GP only ahead of A-Tech Tech Team Purple based on result countback. A further point down, HW Racing best of the rest in P11, with DC Sim Racing on equal points, but results not going their way. And it's Tresla Motorsport, FR20 Sim Racing and A-Tech Tech Racing Team Sign who complete the run to P15. All 3 teams on 5 points, with Night and Day Racing and Empire Motorsport sharing at 4 points alongside Clicks Racing, but in that order based on result countback from P60 to P18. And it's Shell V-Power Race Team on a single point P19, ahead of Ignium Motorsports and UKSimRacing to complete our 21 teams in the standings. But coming from our standings then to our circuit for today, it's none other than the Circuit des 24 Heures du Mans, and located of course near the city of Le Mans in the Pays de la Loire region of France. Well, this circuit is like no other when it comes to high speed racing. As you can see from the circuit map provided to us by iRacing.com, thank you to them of course for their wonderful simulator, and with it the brilliant circuit maps that are provided. This circuit lacks elevation change for the most part, where it's very gradual elevation change, but in return what it does offer is absolutely no holds barred slipstream orientated racing on the extended straights, and in the corners brilliant battling action from start to finish. And so excuse me ladies and gentlemen, I may need to cough in a minute, voice does seem to be going. As our drivers make the way across the start-finish line and up towards turns 1 and 2 through the Dunlop curve and into the Dunlop chicane, they'll find themselves very quickly hammering onto the brakes there at turn number 2 and looking to try and navigate the chicane without cutting the track limits, which always catch drivers out. But as they come through the rise of turn 4 and into the kink of 5, they'll break into the S's turn 6 and 7. They'll roll in the way up towards Tête Rouge, a corner that's so difficult to get right, but get it absolutely spot on and you'll carry all the speed onto the Mulsanne straight, which of course is split with its 2 chicanes due to safety reasons. But as they navigate their way down the straight, it will be about gaining the right toe at the right time. We'll head up towards Mulsanne corner at turns 14 and 15, while the heaviest braking zones on the circuit, we expect our drivers to come down from in excess of 170 miles an hour all the way down to approximately 40 miles an hour on corner apex, and then they'll power the way in the run down towards Indianapolis on another extended straightaway run. And as they come down towards turns 18 and 19, it's the quick right hand kink followed up by the heavy braking zone of turn 19, which can catch many an inexperienced driver out there. Making it sure to get clear of Indianapolis, they'll then head into Arnage corner, perhaps the trickiest corner on the circuit given the fact it's such a tight late apex. We get the right-handed right angle corner right, and then make the way down the back straight up towards the Porsche curves. There it's the sweeping sequence of turns 23, 24 and 25 and 26, where they make the way into the Corvette curves as 27, 28 and 29, where the average speed begins to drop slightly, and then changes to the last 4 corners. It's going to be the Ford chicanes of turns 30 and 31 and 32 and 33, and there we'll see our drivers having to navigate quick direction changes and looking to keep the car balanced as they make their way towards the timeline to go once again. But to give you an insight to our rules for today, because of course we do have a change to rules with there being only 1 race on the schedule, qualifying is an open qualifying format tonight, which means all drivers shall be on the circuit and drivers shall have 30 minutes in which to set their best possible time. I believe they have an unlimited number of laps, but they'll have 30 minutes in total. Race-wise, there should be a single 42-minute endurance race night, which brings together the 12 and 30-minute races of our sprint feature format, and the race shall commence by a standing start, as is the tradition. The endurance race grid shall be set based on results of qualifying, with there being no mandatory pit stop requirements in the endurance race. Indeed, if our drivers come into the pits, that's of their own volition, and a driver should receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. And the way points are going to be awarded for the endurance race, well, they shall be a combination of the traditional sprint feature points format, with the points have been combined together. So that means right now 1 race could settle it all tonight. Indeed, it could be a make or break in a number of drivers' championship campaigns. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything between. I know what you're all here for. You're here to see live racing. And as we get ready to go racing, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in British Summertime DST or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1. And as we can see there, in approximately 2 minutes time, we're going into our qualifying session at 30 minutes in duration, with everybody out of the circuit. And what I can expect a number of drivers putting in their final plans in terms of how they can get the best possible qualifying lap together. But of course, it's going to be a tantalising challenge in the fact slipstream is going to be so important around here down the extended straights, and picking the right time to get a toe could be the difference between pole and P10. And then straight after that, of course, we'll head to the grid for our one and only race today. It's going to be at 8:05. It'll be the 42-minute endurance race. And well, it is going to be an absolute thriller, I can assure you of that, as we get ready to go racing. But of course, an ambient temperature today of 80 degrees centigrade, and that's reflected in the track temperature at the moment. It means it's relatively cool conditions, and therefore drivers should be able to exploit their cars to the utmost. And we're speaking of the one driver who wants to exploit his car from the outset. Here is your Gold Championship leader and arguably the fastest man overall today, and that's Alex Peregrina in number 28 as he makes his way down through the second Mulsanne chicane and upwards towards Mulsanne corner. And well, the Spaniard here, he'll be looking to try and reassert his advantage over Philipp Hammer, given the fact that advantage has gradually been whittled down. But it's going to be a challenge, of course, for him and indeed everybody in class and everybody in the field because of the different complexion of this race. But will Peregrina find himself a bit more comfortable with the longer race duration? Now, if we had to go on what we've seen previously in feature races, I think a lot of our gold drivers do prefer the sprint race compared to the feature. But meanwhile, one driver who does seem to enjoy the feature a little bit more, and that is Ryan Walker, the Scotsman from Satellite Racing. He does seem to just be able to dig in a little bit more into the feature race. And of course, he does normally absolutely utilise the reverse grid going into the feature races, which of course we won't see a reverse grid here. But Walker, when he's ahead of somebody, he can make his car incredibly wide, but of course in a fair fighting fashion. And that's what many will be looking out for as he makes his way way there through the Porsche curves into the Corvette curves. And as he comes on through, we say hello to Medbo there, who says very interested to hear how this round plays out. Also says good evening to you, Medbo. I hope you're doing well. And well, as we do see Roxanne Marshall making her way through Tetra Rouge corner, we've only got about 40 seconds before we do head into the qualifying session. And we'd just like to take a brief moment to let you know that if you have been a long time viewer of UK Sim Racing broadcast, indeed if you've been supporting the community for some time, and if you've ever wondered how you could potentially support the UK Sim Racing community as well as tuning into the broadcast week in, week out, did you know there's a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For UK Sim Racing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real world motorsport companies, including Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And well, to find out more about that, if you do head to our website, which will appear on screen here, you'll notice that there is a link in the top right corner of the screen to our official Discord. And well, if you click on that link, you'll then be taken to our Discord. And why would you want to join our Discord? Well, firstly, if you ever want to compete in a UK Sim Racing official series, you'll need to be part of the Discord. It's a mandatory requirement, but also we're a very friendly bunch at UK Sim Racing, and indeed you may find yourself very comfortable talking to the guys and girls there about sim racing, also real world motorsport and everything else in between. But also for your benefit, we do have a number of discount codes on our Discord which are only available there from our affiliates. And well, if you use one of those codes to make a purchase with one of our affiliates, you as a consumer get a discount, so it works out brilliantly for you, and we get a kickback from your purchase here at UK Sim Racing. But as we are a non-profit organisation, any affiliate earnings we make from your purchase will be invested back into the community to fund future series, including future seasons of the Porsche Cup, the GT3 League, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023 and onwards. So do remember, a little purchase could go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing. But as we do hear the roar of Porsches making their way out of the circuit, one other thing that could go a very long way today, well, it is a strong qualifying lap in this open qualifying session. As all of our drivers make their way on out here, 30 minutes, and it's away we go. And well, for everybody now, as we do bring the circuit map back up on the screen in the top right, I believe it will take a little bit of time, but there it is. And we can see already as all of our drivers make their way on around, it is going to be a very crowded Le Mans circuit, at least for the opening portion of this qualified session. And who is going to find the time in order to absolutely deliver? As we see Alexander Wilfer making his way in to Tetra Rouge, coming on through the right hand and then get himself as compact as possible. And of course on the outlet, just trying to get as much brake and tyre temperature together. He'll be on the next lap where he's going to have to absolutely attack the course for the first time of asking to see what indicative lap he can get on the board. But meanwhile, as we look to Tony Bradley making his way down into the S's here, one of the last cars to come out of the pit lane, I think deciding to go for a little bit of space on the circuit and give himself some breathing room, and heading all the way towards Tetra Rouge now. We look from him to what is Philipp Hammer, and Hammer doing a bit of bobbing and weaving down the straightway here as he heads up toward what will be the first of the Mulsanne chicanes and getting ready to go all the way into the braking zone. Of course, our drivers will be required to get round in a specified period of time on their warm-up laps. They won't be able to just dawdle around and puddle around the circuit at, say, less than 60 miles an hour, but they'll be aware of that, and they'll know where they can heat the brakes a little bit more, where they can work on improving the temperature of the tyres, and where they can cool the car down. But I think also some teams will now be getting themselves into formations potentially in order to get themselves set for slipstream on their respective qualifying laps. And we'll meanwhile do look to David Biggerdike as he makes his way through the second Mulsanne chicane and heading up towards Mulsanne corner. So you may be wondering what's going to be going through our drivers' heads here in terms of the ultimate qualifying lap. Well, firstly, as Medbo quite crudely points out with regards to the way he's explained it, but when he means a big sucking coming there, he's referring to the fact that a good number of drivers will be looking to try and gain the slipstream as much as possible from what is the starter lap to the very end of the lap. And with so many long straights around this course, the idea being that you want to be in the slipstream of another car in order to gain effectively 2, 3, 4 miles an hour in the run down from corner to corner. Of course, the downside of being too close to a driver, when you do go onto a lap, you see somebody going very wide in the rear of the pitch. That's Steve Kershaw, who's found a way to go deep at Mulsanne. He reverses back into the circuit, but for Steve Kershaw, definitely not the way. He's waiting to start off. I think he's avoided the wall, however. He's just simply got a little bit of a bruise to his pride as he brings himself back up to speed. But coming back to the train of thought, you want to try and gain the toe on the lap, but also you want to be absolutely one with the car. You need to feel comfortable with the way you've got the car set up, because again, this circuit does have a whole variety of aspects to it, but you'd want low downforce typically on the machine, given there's so many extended straights. So low downforce, but control of the car as well as you come through the medium to low speed apexes, such as the run through the Corvette curves, also through the forward chicanes at the very end of the lap, and at the start of the lap as well. Tetrou, such a critical corner to be able to get right lap after lap. In qualifying, you need to get it right only once in order to get the ultimate lap, as we see Kershaw continue to have difficulty in getting the car on around Indianapolis, and I think he might have to take a visit to the pit lane as he makes his way out of Arnage and out towards the Porsche curves. Meanwhile, we look from him to what is Lewis Willisey, as Willisey now heading in to the Porsche curves here in the 44 car, and will get himself set for a qualifying lap soon. I believe we do have a couple of drivers who are closer to the timing line, including Ricardo Jimenez here, as the Yotautas racing driver makes his way on around. But we are trying to see who's going on to a lap very shortly, and Alex Peregrina a bit closer, as we can see a couple more making their way on through the forward chicanes already. Well, that is going to be Steve Hobbs navigating his way clear, but as we see all the drivers flowing on through, we jump on board here, Haroldas Jotautas, as he takes us around for a flying lap on the Le Mans circuit. He's making his way out towards the Dunlop chicane at turn 2. First by the right-hander at turn number 1, flat out here all the way into the corner. Sixth gear, turns on in nice and early, clips the apex curve, and immediately onto the brakes. He straight lines the steering wheel down the second gear, connects one apex, then the other. A little bit of a wobble off the turn 2 apex, but collects the car back together, and now heading all the way down through the kink of 4, and into the S's via the right-hander of 5, up to 5th gear, now onto the brakes here as he gradually settles the car down to 3rd gear, fights at the steering wheel there to correct the oversteer under braking, coming through turn number 7, flat out on the charge now as he heads into Tetrou. You're just listening. Dab of the brake, drop a gear and shut the car into the corner flat out as he goes out of the corner here. Now it's full throttle. Has he gained the time he wants to as he makes his way onto the Mulsanne straight, and now he can have a brief breather here as he goes down the first part of what's been broken into 3 shorter straights as he makes his way up towards the chicane number 1. Now here heading to excess 175 miles an hour by the time he gets to the braking zone. Absolutely at the maximum here of the car, right on the rev limiter as he heads onto the brake shortly, looking for the marshal's post on his left hand side and coming all the way down from 136 miles an hour, trail braking into the chicane, down to its 70 miles an hour corner apex, keeps the car just in track limits, 2 wheels in the side of the white lines, and as he makes his way now onto the second part of the straight, it's going to be a shorter run as he comes on down, but the difference this time of course is he's got another chicane to come, and with a little bit less speed potentially he's got to try and find a way to carry a bit more speed in to the next chicane's apex. But heading up towards what will be 170 miles an hour before he looks at his brake mark on the right hand side, 171, 172, 173, and as he comes onto the brakes here, backs the car off, brings it gently towards the right hand apex curve here, 3rd gear, and as he navigates out, goes a little bit deeper corner exit, but collects it together just in time. I think the right hand side wheels were just on the white lines, and as he makes his way through the kink and now down towards Mulsanne corner, it's another long run as he powers on through, and well, this is where you can see the lap is so much on full throttle as he gets ready for the turn 14 kink and then into Mulsanne itself, looking to his board on the left hand side to his turning point and coming at 171 miles an hour, down all the way to what is that on corner apex, 54 miles an hour as he powers out and now runs down towards Indianapolis. One more long straight, he's got a distant tyre as well being given to him by a car in front. We're not quite sure who that is, but what we can tell you is that Jotautas will be feeding that over the course of this extended straight. As he comes through the 2 kinks underneath the billboards, where it feels like an eternity, but Indianapolis corner will surprise him shortly as he heads on down under another Toyota board and now makes his way into turn at number 18. Shortly onto the brakes here from 6th gear, bring the car down to 5th as he drops the speed to 140, then brakes more severely into turn 19 at Indianapolis. 3rd gear on corner exit and up towards Arnage, look to the left hand side for his brake mark, it'll be at what is the 100 metre board, and going all the way down to 2nd gear, 48 miles an hour on corner exit, and as he comes out now onto the power once again as the car slides, and now making his way up towards what will be the Porsche curves, building the speed up here and distant toe once again, and this will give him about 2 to 3 miles an hour in the long haul as he heads in towards the high speed sequence, and we'll get ready for it, ladies and gentlemen. Confidence there, but a little bit of understeer creeping in on turning in 4th gear, and as he makes way through the double left now into 5th gear, he holds the car as he comes on through the left into right. Will he drop to 4th before apex? He does, to try and get the car to bite in a little bit more, but suddenly switch of direction into the left hand at the start of the Corvette curves, and as he comes on through the left hand, keeps her in track limits, 4th gear, powers through the little twisty bit here as he makes his way up towards what will be at the forward chicanes, coming out to the Corvette curves and through it, turns 28, 29, now to turn 30, onto the brakes here at pit lane entry, down to 4th gear, carry as much speed as possible, drop to 3rd, and now onto the brakes once again, down to 2nd, but he dropped to 1st, first on the final apex? No, he does not, but that is a lap of Le Mans as brought to you by Haroldas and Jotautas, the over limit racing drivers. He heads to the line. Well, it hasn't been a perfect lap, but it will be provisional pole. But we've got a lot more times to come yet as he decides to park up and return to the pits. But as he goes on through, meanwhile, and that was a 3:57.882, and it is a very fast lap. We've still got plenty more laps to come from our drivers. We are only a third of the way into this qualifying session, if that, if they power their way on down. And we say hello there to Tampax Comfort, who asked the question, is this a fixed setup series? Nope, our drivers are able to bring whichever setup they would like on the car to each and every race. It is an open setup series, but of course here I think a lot of our drivers will be going for as little downforce in the car as possible, but of course some may go for a little bit of rear wing just to help settle the rear of the car down. But meanwhile, I can tell you one driver who never settles down unless he's on pole, and it's Philipp Hammer as he makes his way out the final quarter to the timeline. And well, it's looking at a very fast lap and not quite fast enough for pole. Jotautas there, 1/10 faster. It's a 3:58.007 for Hammer, but we've still got plenty more times to come in this qualifying session, as we do see Hammer now heading on to his second lap, and where he's going to go for it again. Now, it'll be interesting to see as well, in terms of the fact we have a number of drivers who may not have enough fuel to do more than one flying lap. Others may have decided to go up heavy tanks of fuel and burn the fuel down in qualifying for the final lap, where they'll have all the tyres up to temperature. Indeed, there'll be quite a bit of wear into the tyre at that point. But some other drivers by comparison, such as Jotautas, putting enough fuel for an out lap and then a flying lap and then taking it back to the pit lane. They'll rinse and repeat that, and who's going to be on pole as a result, because of course both techniques have their advantages and disadvantages. Those who decide to go for only one lap's worth of flying fuel, well, for them they put it all on the line for a single lap, and it takes a longer amount of time for them to recover if they get it wrong. Conversely, those out there on heavy fuel, if they can't burn enough fuel out of the car before they go on to their final lap, they may find themselves at a disadvantage, and in return, if they then have difficulty on the final lap or make a major mistake, it all comes away. But meanwhile, speaking of coming away, the rear end there of Hobbs' car coming loose. He just avoids the tyre barrier there, coming out the second Mulsanne chicane. And we'll cut to Steve Hobbs, because you may notice that the FR20 Sim Racing teams, including the base team and Team Purple, are running new liveries for today, as we see Hobbs there making his way back to the pit lane, and Luke Andrews from FR20 Sim Racing Purple making his way on out of Mulsanne and down towards Indianapolis. But as we say, they are running a new livery today. It's a special edition Le Mans livery on the car, and it's a carbon fibre wrapped machine. So it's absolutely great to see here the livery in full splendour under the French sun, as we see Andrews charging on down there towards Indianapolis. And well, we look forward to seeing how they all get on. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite get a word with Steve or the team with regards to how they're feeling for tonight, but based on how Andrews is doing so far with P3 there, and almost what is a whole second faster than next silver driver Roxanne Marshall, though interesting to see the two of them are together there, P3, P4, albeit there's quite the gulf between them. I wonder if some drivers will try and sandwich their way in between. It does look as though Andrews feeling confident, and that confidence may rub off to his teammates, indeed into the race itself, as he makes his way up towards the Porsche curves. Meanwhile, we do look from him to some of our other drivers on around, including the boys at Sean Cranley-Swash, the HW Racing driver here in the Canada delivery machine, coming on through what is, I do believe that's heading from the Porsche curves into the Corvette curves, and as he comes on out, yet to get a time on the board. Indeed, we have 17 drivers who so far got times on the board, and we still do have, what is that, approximately 12 drivers yet to get an indicative time. And of course, just getting the time at the circuit is a change in itself, with some rather aggressive track limits, but that's where you've got to drive within your limits in order to set a bank a lap. But as Cranley-Swash heads to the timeline, what's it going to be for the number 17 driver, who has been going from strength to strength over the last few rounds, and what is P4 so far, the 3:59.188. It is a highly variable qualifying session. He puts himself right between Andrews and Marshall, and a lot of drivers, I get the feeling, have not quite found the time they're looking for. But I wonder whether drivers such as, for example, what is Chris Cole, are running more fuel in the car, and perhaps they're going for the investment, which is they're going to be delivering. If you take the average lap of being 4 minutes, albeit it's a bit less than that in actuality, but if we go with it as being 4 minutes, perhaps they put about 3 to 4 laps worth of fuel in the car, and they're just trying to burn it down, and we'll see those lap times tumble in their nature as the confidence builds up and the car becomes lighter. But as we see at Cole, they're getting a bit wrong coming out to the forward chicanes, and decides to return to the pits. Not too pleased with how that's ended, and we can understand why, as meanwhile Sean Dobie heads to the time line with David Biggerdike just in front, and Biggerdike then does improve, so does Dobie, but Biggerdike goes P6 overall, Dobie P18, in fact he's demoted with Joe Pinder moving into P17, and as they make their way around, both drivers then will be demoted by Steve Kershaw, as we do see here Kershaw heading up towards turn number 1, and after the difficulties on his outlap with regards to what was of course the mistake at Mulsanne, he hasn't made a mistake in his first flying lap of the day, he's absolutely nailed it as he heads on out and up towards what will be at Tetridge Corner very shortly, but coming on down and through and all the way up towards where he turns 5, 6 and 7 he roars. Well, for Kershaw, his next target of course will be Hobbs, who is currently only half a tenth faster if that, and it is looking very tight to be inside the top 10 at the moment, with Ward moving to what is P11, Jack Ward there on a 4-minute .970, and well, meanwhile tries yet to get time on the board, include Corey Lazarus, as Lazarus makes his way down towards where's the second Mulsanne chicane, in fact the first Mulsanne chicane we should say, as he gets ready to break there, and well, what can Lazarus do given the fact this is not looking to be a qualifying session that's working out in his favour at this moment on an outlap, so therefore he'll be just being the car up to its ideal operating conditions. It'll be the next lap of interest. As meanwhile, drivers who are on a lap, Jack Isherwood as he heads down towards the first Mulsanne chicane, all the way it's a long run, albeit he does a little bit of weave in there, and I think he's still trying to find a bit of tyre temperature, so not too happy with the way the car's feeling. But meanwhile, a driver who is coming to a timeline, it is Charles Phillips. The Phillips GP driver crosses the line. It's not a bad lap. He's going to have to go again, and well, time is now starting to turn against drivers here, given the fact we're almost at the halfway point of the qualifying session, and well, 15 minutes may sound like a lot, but now the pressure's on, particularly if you've yet to get a lap on the board. Now you've got to think about, are you trying to go all in for the ultimate lap, or instead do you now think about that banker and seeing what merit it can bring you? And I think for what is here Phillips and company, they may be starting to think about what is going to be a banker lap, and including in that company, well, here is your gold championship leader from Avatar Racing. He's got behind there Jimenez as they both make the way on out, and well, for Peregrina, what can he do as he goes on to another flying lap? No time on the board. I think he'll feel as though it will come soon in terms of lap time, but he's going to be leaving this quite late in the day to get a first time on the timing tower, and the time to beat, of course, a 3:57.882 as set by the over limit racing driver Haroldas Jotautas, as right now we continue to watch here Peregrina heading through at the Dunlop chicane. But as he makes his way over the rise and down into turns 5, 6 and 7 into the S's sequence very shortly, well, of course, he won't be thinking about the times. He'll be thinking about is simply what he's able to do with the time he's got on track. And of course, it's been one of those drivers who's been right up there in every qualifying session. Albeit Hammer has been responding. Jotautas has always been an ever-present threat as well. So it's those three names that continue to resonate over the course of each and every qualifying session. As we can see already, Jimenez being left behind a little bit here by always Peregrina. But of course, with the long straight now down the Mulsanne, it does mean that Peregrina has an opportunity to let Jimenez catch up, albeit as they head on down. You see both drivers, they're putting themselves right in the middle of the road. I think this might be to just try and shorten the run and let the car gradually negotiate its way over to the left for the braking zone into where's the first of the chicane. In fact, quite an aggressive approach there as I made the way, and it's a lock up for where's Jimenez, and as he comes on through, well, meanwhile we can see Peregrina showing no signs of surprise there as he makes his way down towards the second chicane, but a mistake, a critical one for Jimenez, cost him dear, and we're already Peregrina just running away and deciding to go. As he makes his way out towards where's the second of the chicanes. A good observation there from Medway to say the track must be getting a bit slower, not many improving, and it does look as though a lot of drivers started to struggle in this qualifying session to improve upon their very first times. In terms of the weather conditions here, well, we can see that in terms of ambient and track temperature, it's risen a degree centigrade since the start of the session today, but no major difference. We've got partial cloud as well, so I think for our drivers here, the time is just not coming, and with those low track temperatures, they're really having to push hard in order to be able to find a little bit more time. Of course, it's a double-edged sword. When it's not a warm circuit, it does mean it can feel like a bit of an ice rink, to use the nickname that many drivers give to a circuit that is cold, where the car just wants to constantly slide. If you push too far beyond the limits, then the car just starts to snap loose. These Porsche Cup cars, the 992 of course, are very sensitive to loss of grip, particularly on those rear tyres, whether it being a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, but arguably rear engine rear-wheel drive, given the fact the engine is so close to the rear axle. But as we do see what is here, Peregrina heading on down towards Indianapolis corner. We'll monitor his progress remotely as meanwhile we look to Philipp Hammer heading up towards the forward chicanes. And well, if a driver's finding time to improve, it is this man. As the Team Germany driver makes his way through turns 32 and 33 on two wheels there for a brief moment as he comes to the line. Does he find a way to dethrone Jotautas from pole? And he does by 6.5 tenths on a 357.240. When we finally have another driver who's made it into the 357s, and he's not just made it into them, he's smashed his way into them. And well, what a lap from Hammer, and I think now many drivers are going to have to respond. But meanwhile, Luke Andrews, and I can see it there, Racing Dutch, I believe, cheering on that Luke Andrews in particular, saying get in there, Luke, and indeed the silver pole sitter right now, P3, a whole second off of Hammer's provisional pole time. But of course, the Andrews, this is 4 tenths between himself and Biggerdike, but we have a number of silver drives really showing their hand, including Sean Cranley Swash in P5, and just finding a lot of pace. And this is a very interesting qualifying field. We have not seen it this season where a good number of silver drives are able to usurp their gold peers, but we could have quite the inverted grid going into our race today. And if that's so, in terms of having so many silvers in amongst the golds, it could get very nip and tuck on the open laps on the straights in terms of gold drives and silver drives trying to negotiate their way into attacking positions versus their peers, but at the same time trying to find an edge over their rivals. But meanwhile, speaking of trying to find an edge, or Alex Peregrina heading to the timeline, and what's it going to be here? He went purple in subsector 3. It's a valid lap, and it's a 3:58.056. It's 8 tenths off of the pole lap and 2 tenths off of Jotautas' P2 lap. But Peregrina finally gets the time on the board, so I think that's now going to settle him down a little bit and make him think, okay, I've still got a bit of time to get at least 2 laps on the board after my out lap. I can potentially now go for pole, at least for the front row of the grid. But time is definitely going against the number of drivers who've yet to get times on the board. And well, we can see in the danger zone in terms of the bottom of that timing tower, we still do have what is Tony Bradley, Alistair Hatcher, Håkon Grebstad, Glenn Humberstone, Corey Lazarus, Ricardo Jimenez and Rob Zelby, all yet to get times on the board. And speaking of Zelby, as he makes his way there through Mulsanne corner, the Shell V-Power race team driver trying to keep it together, runs a bit deep out Mulsanne, and I wonder if that will have invalidated the lap as he makes his way on down towards what is the Indianapolis corner. He's got a good long run in which to go for it as he heads up towards the next braking zone, and I think he'll be thinking now that a time has got to come soon. Again, we've got 23 drivers with times on the board and 7 yet to put times. It's going to be a field of 30 here today, and what I believe, barring the season opening pair of rounds, that may be one of the largest, if not the largest grids we've had this season. And of course, drivers come and go due to personal circumstances, but that's why there's drop scores in this season, which means if you're not able to make every pair of rounds or every single round, as is the case today with only being a single round, you're not punished immediately for it. And as Zelby heads out of Arnage, well, he now knows he's got to go for gold, because indeed he may be left behind by his gold peers if things carry on as they are. But heading up towards the Porsche curves, he's got clear track in front of him, albeit I believe that's Kershaw, the silver class driver who's P17, who's approximately 3 seconds up the road. So it will mean that Zelby's not really feeling a distant toe at the moment. If he gets close, coming on through these final corners, that may start to give him a little bit of woe with regards to some understeers. It's a tap to the wall, my good lord. And well, for Zelby, I think that's the closest you ever want to get to the wall in terms of making contact any harder, and I think the car would have ended up going sideways on corner exit. But for Zelby, absolutely pushing it hard to the very limit, and I think doing everything in his power in order to be able to get the ultimate lap time on the board as he heads down towards the full chicanes and well into the pits. No, I think he was thinking about whether he comes in and then remind himself, no, you haven't got a lap on the board, you've got to get this done. But as he heads off for a little bit of hesitance there, turning into the final pair of corners, I think just turning a little bit prematurely and instead having to wait a little bit longer and coming across the line. What's it going to be? It's P13, a 4-minute 0.560, and for Zelby, that's a good start. I think he'll feel as though there's a bit more out there with 8 minutes still on the clock. But as he heads up towards the Dunlop chicane, meanwhile we look to the Indian Motorsport machine of what is here Joe Pinder. And speaking of Indian Motorsport, well, Pinder's been out on circuit since the start of the qualifying session, but just turned his first lap of the session now. I believe they've had to try and get the car set up, and it's been a bit late to the circuit. Håkon Grebstad, who we see here, making his way on down to where's the second Mulsanne chicane. Well, he's left it late in the day, but can Grebstad find a way to pop in a lap at very short notice? My gut feeling says yes, but it's not going to be the fastest lap out there that he could potentially achieve. But then Grebstad, we have seen go very strongly in qualifying sessions, even when he's had time pressure against him in the Porsche Cup Season 6 so far. And will he be able to find it once more here? Albeit now the stakes are a bit higher, of course, because everything for the one race today is presided upon and preceded by the single qualifying session. But he head up towards Mulsanne. Well, he's on his way towards the end of an outlap. Meanwhile, we look from him to some drivers who are coming towards the timing line, including Cameron Willisey, as he negotiates his way on through the forward chicanes, weaving on through. And as he does, well, he does have a little bit of company behind, but that's Jack Ward who's following him through, and Willisey heading across the timeline. And what's it going to be? It was P12. He moves to P6. He halves his deficit to the top of the field in terms of places, and he's now 1.5 seconds off the Hammer's provisional pole lap on a 3:58.717. Interestingly, putting him right in amongst the silver group of Andrews, Bigodite and Cranley Swash, and then in fact P6. So he's put a separation of what is a 10th either side between himself, Bigodite, and then also Cranley Swash at the other end. So if Sean Cranley Swash is able to improve, he may find himself jumping back onto that third row of the grid, but still a strong performance from that trio in the silvers. There's no question about it. Meanwhile, perhaps the question that needs to be asked to a degree, what happened to Roxanne Marshall? Well, Marshall currently parked in the pit lane for 24-hour Punty People P9. Not out of arm's reach in terms of the top drivers in the silver class here in qualifying, but definitely I think looking at the times I'm thinking, what else am I able to get out of the car given time's running out, or is Marshall just parking up and saying, right, that's it, as we're hearing that Grebstad has had to return to the pits after a mistake. And now it does mean that for Grebstad, he's got very limited time left. He's got 6 minutes to go. And as far as we're aware, I don't think there's overtime available in this qualifying session. What we mean by that, if you'll recall, in all the close qualifying sessions we've had so far this season, when the 8 minutes is struck on the clock, we've immediately seen our drivers have to come into the pits. They're not allowed to finish the lap. And if that applies here, then right now that does mean that Grebstad will be starting from towards the back of the field, because he's on an outlap. He's just started an outlap, and there is no way he's going to get around to go onto a flying lap within less than 2 minutes. And for Grebstad, well, that is going to be an absolute mission for him to come from the back of the field to try and go hunting after the win, or let alone a podium, we should really say. And as he gets himself set for what is going to be perhaps a difficult day in the office, meanwhile, Hobbs making his way on through Tetra Rouge, and going all the way through and up towards what is the Mulsanne chicanes. Now on the long straight he goes. Well, he's going to be keeping his head down here. P8 in the silver class currently. On his P18 overall, he is the best part of what is 1.4 attempts over the lap time of Willisey, and that is a Lewis Willisey in P17. Speaking of Lewis Willisey, here he comes out of Tetra Rouge as well, so he's going on to his final lap as he charges his way on down the Mulsanne straight. He's got a little bit of company in front of him. I do believe that is one of the Treadstone Motorsport Willisey racing machines that he's trying to leech a bit of slipstream off of. And I don't think he'll be too worried about that. I think he'll be grateful for the fact he is going to gain a bit of a straight line speed run in towards the Mulsanne chicanes and eventually into Indianapolis if things stay as they are. As we're hearing that Ricardo Jimenez, meanwhile, moving to P12 on a 4-minute 0.141. And well, for Jimenez, definitely working his way up the order for Avatar to race him. But still, we are not seeing any more huge gains from any drivers at this time, albeit Kershaw's now moved up to P16, so he's got himself into the top 20 ahead of Corey Lazarus. And perhaps that's a degree of shock there. Corey Lazarus not going too strongly in qualifying. He will have enough time to get one more lap in, but the number 4 driver, the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, the sole driver from the team here today, I believe Sproul not in attendance unless my eyes do deceive me. Well, as Lazarus comes on through the S's, he's going to be flying the banner for Team Solo, and well, I think more of the work's going to have to come in the race. And Lazarus, to be fair, has been more of a race-paced driver over the course of the season from what we've seen, but as he heads up towards what is the Mulsanne straight now, he'll be thinking about where is it all going to come from in terms of the pace. And we say hello there to Marvin Cruz, who says good evening, just in time for the most interesting part of quali. Nice, and we're glad to have you with us, Marvin. And well, meanwhile, as we do marvel at the performances of our drivers here, Jack Ward heading towards the end of the lap, heading on through the Corvette curves and up towards the Ford chicanes. Well, he's improved over the majority of the lap, albeit had a bit of a struggle in the Porsche curves by comparison with his previous best. And as he comes down towards what is there, the chicanes, and indeed I am correct, as Samuel Sprout is on the grid. I do apologise, my eyesight does seem to not want to work. So he's P11. Thank you for that, Medvo, for clarifying. And as we do see Ward heading across the timeline, well, when he moved from P19, he does. He jumps up to P10. That's a beautiful lap from Ward and puts him right slap bang in the middle of the silver grid. they're trying to push for a top 10, and in fact pushes Marshall out the top 10 for the first time in this qualifying session, and Marshall in the pit lane, so Roxanne Marshall will not be able to improve, Ward will not be able to improve either, presuming that the closed qualifying, oh not the closed qualifying, the no overtime rule isn't affecting qualifying here today, and well, meanwhile out there on circuit at the moment, I think this is more for a safety procedure rather than needed to deliver, given that Jotautas and Peregrina are both in the pits. They're not heading back out. Well, Philipp Hammer still putting in the times as he heads on round down. I think he's trying to just give himself an even bigger confidence boost, as meanwhile following on behind, that's Charles Phillips as he heads on through. And the double left-hander there, all that turns, what are 26 and 27, and as he comes towards the Corvette curves, will make his way on through the left-hander, and now on to at the Ford chicanes he charges. Well, can Phillips move up from P15, well, it's P9 in the gold class, where he's got a Hammer giving him all the toe possible. In fact, Phillips, the fastest in subsector 2 and subsector 5, Hammer fastest in subsector 1, so both drivers are trying to improve, as meanwhile Hammer lets it go. I think Hammer giving him the toe over the lap, which Phillips will be very grateful for, and as the number 12 car heads to the timeline, what's this going to be for Phillips? He was P15 at the start of the lap, and now he comes P2, my goodness, and Phillips jumps up, and with a 3:57.526, he's one of only 3 drivers, Hammer, Phillips and Jotautas, to set a 57 in this qualifying session, and well, now this is going to throw the front 2 rows on its head in the fact that Hammer will be taking pole position by the looks of it, as Jotautas makes his way back on out and decides just to get a little bit more track time, but meanwhile Phillips puts himself on the front row with Hammer, and I think Hammer might have just bought himself a bit of space. If he's able to hold Phillips off in the run to turn number 2 on the opening lap, then he may be able to just break away, whilst Phillips of course will very lightly try to dig in versus Jotautas and Peregrina, because Phillips looking to get a lot of points on the board, and we know that Phillips a very fast driver when he's in his element. But as they make the way on around, we do look from them to what is Ricardo Jimenez, and Jimenez heading to the line. In fact, he comes on through, doesn't decide to defect his way into the pit lane, and making his way up towards the last 2 quarters, left into right here for Jimenez. What's it going to be? He's P16 at the moment, hasn't been the best lap to come to the end of his qualifying session. Can he find a little bit more? He does. It's a P10, so it's a 3:59.269, but I think he feels a bit more. Will he be safe inside the top 10 as Isherwood still making his way on around? Corey Lazarus crosses the timeline off camera. I see him out the contact with a 3:59.103, moves him to P10, Jimenez drops to P11, and well, Isherwood will be the last driver to get a lap in within the 30 minutes, or will he? He's going to be very close. I don't think he's going to get there in time, given the fact through the first Ford chicane he goes, it's going to be more than 5 seconds before he gets to the timeline, but as he comes on down, what's it going to be on the line? Checker flag is out, and well, Isherwood literally misses out by hair's width there. He'll start P22, but it's Hammer on pole for the race, and let's go to the grid. As our drivers line up on the grid, and indeed this is how they'll all line up today. Well, in fact, we won't be able to quite take you to the grid just yet. I think there has been a warm-up session that has been added to this, and it's going to be a brief session for all of our drivers, but as they all head to the pit lane for a brief moment, we can take you through how qualifying has played on out, and well, as those results will appear on screen very shortly, we can see there Philipp Hammer taking pole position by 3 attempts for Team Germany on a 3:57.240 with Charles Phillips P2 for Phillips GP. Haroldas Jotautas, we started at P3 for Over Limit Racing, and well, he's just managed to inch ahead of Alex Peregrina, close between them, but those two for Over Limit Racing and Jotautas Racing, both 9. They lost some key time to Hammer and Phillips, and therefore they've got it all to do when we go green flag racing. Ryan Walker, we starting at P5, the satellite racing, try snatching at P5 there at the close, and well, what a qualifying lap that will be, given the fact he took P5 by only 1,000th over your silver pole sitter, or that Luke Andrews, who again absolutely demonstrating his core performance and indeed his right to be at the top of the silver class in his opinion. DC Sim Races, Derek Bidnight will follow behind the FR20 Sim Racing purple driver as they all get ready to go racing, and then we can see Cameron Willis racing up. He's starting at P8 there to complete the 4th row, with Sean Cradley Swash at P9 for HW Racing, and Corey Lazarus at P10 for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, and a mention to Sean Cradley Swash, the HW Racing driver, enjoying one of his strongest qualifying sessions of the season. For Corey Lazarus, a late charge into the top 10 worked out quite well for him, all things considered, and as we continue to look on down the field, Ricardo Jimenez P11 at best of the rest for Jotautas Racing, ahead of Chris Cole, and it will be Jack Warden and Roxanne Marshall, the two silver peers who line up together on the 7th row. Samuel Sprout and Aaron Tressel will be lined up P15 and P16 in a difficult qualifying session for Samuel Sprout, and difficult to the point we didn't notice he was in the session. I do apologise. I think I'm going to have to go down to him in the paddock afterwards and give it a bit of a personal apology for the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver there. Well, he's going to be looking to make sure he's on the radar when we do go green flag racing, and Tressel alongside the same as well for Tressel Motorsport, with Alexander Wilfer and Rob Selby completing the top 18. And as we continue our way down to P19, P20, Steve Hobbs and Steve Kershaw together there on the 10th row of the grid, with Lewis Willesey at P21 and Jack Ishwood P22. Now we get Wayne Basson, who conversely having one of the weakest qualified sessions of his season, the circuit not seemingly going with his driving style, and Joe Pinder alongside him on that 12th row for Ignium Motorsport. Now we Clicks Races, Sean Dowie P25 ahead of the FR20 Sim Racing machine of Craig Tillerston, and then Tony Bradley and Håkon Grebstad not getting any times on the boards. They'll start from what is the 14th row of the grid, and our last two drivers will be Glenn Humberstone and Alistair Hatcher, but 4 drivers not setting times in qualifying, and well, it is a surprise and not a welcome one for them, but Håkon Grebstad perhaps the biggest loser of them all in terms of not setting that time, and he is going to have to fight his way through the order as soon as possible. But as our drivers all get themselves set, we are now going into the race, ladies and gentlemen. In the fact, the warm-up session has come to a close, and well, now everyone's been given a breather, and it is time for us to get ready for 42 minutes of racing. So as our drivers make their way to the grid, let's walk you through that grid once again. And it is Philipp Hammer on pole for Team Germany, joined by Giles Phillips of Phillips GP alongside. Close between them, 3 tenths at the close, with Haroldas, Jotautas and Alex Peregrina line up on the 2nd row. It's Ryan Walker and Luke Andrews on row number 3, with Luke Andrews your silver pole sitter. And then it will be David Biggerdike for DC Sim Racing and Karen Willesey who line up on row at number 4. On row 5, it's Sean Cranley-Swash for HW Racing and Blackout Motorsport New Zealand's Corey Lazarus. And they get set to go with the drivers behind Ricardo Jimenez and Chris Cole, and on row at number 7 it's the pair of Jack Ward and Roxanne Marshall. Samuel Sprout and Aaron Tressel line up on row at number 8, with Alexander Wilfer and Rob Selby on row 9, and in row 10 to complete the top 20 it's Steve Hobbs and Steve Kershaw. Behind the two Steves it's Lewis Willesey and Jack Ishwood on row at number 11, with row 12 going to Wayne Basson and Joe Pinder, and then a bit further back on row number 13 it's Sean Doby and Craig Tillerston, followed up by Tony Bradley and Håkon Grebstad, and then Glenn Humberstone and Alistair Hatcher to complete our 15 rows. But the grid is set, we await the lights. One red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the endurance special here at Le Mans in round 9 of the Porsche Cup Season 6. And as Philipp Hammer gets the launch off the line, it's going to be a long run up towards the Dunlop chicane. But as they come through Dunlop curve at turn number 1, Hammer's done exactly what he needed to, which is get the launch off the line. Meanwhile, Jotautas trying to go around the outside to inside versus Phillips. He gets it done hot on the brakes as Jotautas trying to put some pressure onto Hammer. Just about gets the car stopped. Peregrina, meanwhile, round the outside of Phillips. And as they head on towards where's the S's, already ground being made by Peregrina. He's going on the attack save for Jotautas. Ryan Walker stays behind in P5 as they all come charging down the hill. We'd see there 2 wide for Marshall versus where's Aaron Tressler, and on the inside they're into turn number 5. Tressler's going to try and hold outside to inside, gets it covered off nicely as Tressler and Roxanne Marshall gaining a little bit of ground, but not enough to consider a major gain going into Tetra Rouge. Defence there from Samuel Sprout takes the place of the Marshall as they now make the way into the Mulsanne, but it does look as though that for Sprout having a poor run off the corner, and he's going to have to give the space as they make their way down the Mulsanne for the first time of asking. Now in the long charge here, of course, all our drivers now need to navigate themselves into the order in terms of picking up the toe and just waiting, looking for opportunities. But speaking of which, as we look to the front of the field as they head on down, we can see their Hammer still breaking away. Meanwhile, Jotautas under pressure on Peregrina. Peregrina up the inside. Jotautas gives it the space to the lock-up for Peregrina. He goes straight on. He'll look to recover the car, but he has to take his time and get it stopped. He does indeed, but he's going to lose a lot of places here as that will be a mandatory slowdown. And will Philipp Hammer now breaking away even more. Now 1.9 seconds. If Hammer carries this on, he's gone. He will not be caught unless he makes a mistake at this rate. But meanwhile, Phillips in P2, he's got the pressure of Jotautas, Walker and Willesey behind. All 4 drivers here trying to square up as we see it's almost 3 wide in the run behind Phillips, and it's going to be Jotautas on the right of the picture looking past Phillips. Phillips in the middle, Walker on the left. Walker backs off in the end, but Jotautas still there on the inside as they break the way on in. Phillips squeezes him to the first apex as they come on through. Well, it looks like Jotautas there playing discretion's a better part of valour as they make the way up towards the Mulsanne corner now, up towards turns 14 and 15. But in the charge charge. Meanwhile, we've got a bit further back, a bit of an incident occurring. Sean Cranny's wash in a crumpled Porsche. Well, I think there's a bit of a story to that one, as we also do see Alex Peregrina having a very slow run back onto the circuit, so it's gone very wrong for the pair of them. We're not quite sure what's happened, but meanwhile, it's open season here in terms of batting. That's Joe Pinder, and behind him already, and that is, well, my eyes do not deceive me, that's Håkon Grebstad. Grebstad trying to gain even more places. He's up to P14. Grebstad is absolutely flying as Pinder locks up. As he makes way into Moles, and will lock up there. Of course, one Indian Motorsport driving lets the other gain as they make their way on towards Indianapolis now. But Pinder will be compounded in terms of his woes, so you can see going up the inside is Samuel Sproul. It's a long run, and as they head up towards the first king, Sproul will get ahead, but Pinder will be hoping he can come back. Heading down towards Indianapolis corner, it's still one more king, and then further behind, Kershaw and Marshall started the battle, albeit Kershaw backing off in, deciding to stay in tow, as Sproul meanwhile covering off Pinder into the braking zone. Kershaw looks up the inside but can't find the space and therefore backs off. Meanwhile, defending behind Aaron Tress and Wayne Basson as they make their way into the braking zone for turn number 19, but everyone stops for a brief moment. But meanwhile, a mistake there from what is, I do believe, it's David Bigadai as the camera spins around the UKSimRacing trying getting it wrong, and on Arch corner, and we also saw a mistake for what was Steve Hobbs coming out of the Indianapolis corner, so many a drive being called out, and as they all power their way down towards the Porsche curves, we've got quite a few instances to give you a replay of on the open lap, and we will get the footage queued up and ready to go. But meanwhile, we still have the live pictures at the time being, and we'll Pinder versus Marshall. You can see in the rear of the cameras they make the way into the right hand at the start of the Porsche curve sequence, and Marshall covering the space off as Pinder, after a great start, now falling down to a degree, but as they make the way through the double left and into the right hander, we still need to keep in mind that Pinder has gained at what is a grand total of 6th place in class since the start, and 8 overall. He's had an ace of the start as Joe Pinder, and I don't think he'll be complaining too much, as now he settles into a rhythm. But running wide there just in front, that is Sprout versus Hobbs, and therefore I do believe with running wide, I think Sprout will have to give some time back as he makes his way in towards the 4 chicanes, but he charges down in towards the chicane sequence of corners. Well, after one lap, we see your race leader heading up towards turn 2. It's Philipp Hammer who leads, ahead of Haroldas, Jotautas P2, Charles Phillips P3, followed by Brian Walker P4, Karen Willisey P5, ahead of Corey Lazarus in P6. Your top 6 starting to break away, with Ricardo Jimenez giving pursuit in P7, Chris Cole in P8, followed up by Jack Ward, your silver leader P9, and then Luke Andrews at P10, with Vesteres Håkon Grebstad P11, and Grebstad has come from 28th on the grid, and the Indian Motorsport driver is still within 11 seconds of leaders. He is pushing hard, is the number 37, and well, who can blame him for the fact that after not getting a qualifying lap on the board, he's giving it everything, as we have got 4 drivers in the pit lane, including Cranley, Swash, Wilford, Peregrina and Humberstone, all with damage to their cars. Alice Thatcher not able to make it to the grid due to technical issues for the car, so we had one retirement before we went racing. But meanwhile, one Indian Motorsport cars had success, the other ones had difficulty ever more, as the 22 of Pinder has gone around, and that's not a common place to see it go around on the exit of 5 before 6, so I think there's a little bit more to that. But meanwhile, as we look from Pinder, who recovers up to Steve Kershaw, will now Kershaw into P16, P7 in the silver class, battling with silver peers Aaron Tressa and also Lewis Willisey, where you can see Willisey and Tressa on the right of the picture, with Tressa putting himself in the middle of the road. Kershaw's got the overspeed. I don't think Tressa feels comfortable. He's wobbling from side to side. Something's up on the cold turn. He's trying to figure out where he needs to be. As we see also going slowly there, that is both Wentz Marshall and Jimenez. They both got slowdowns to serve, and well, it was 4 wide for a brief moment, but they all negotiated in the end as they make their way out the first chicane, now onto the second one. It is crazy out of circuit in terms of the ground being made by some drivers, and others lose out, and will the biggest gain, of course, Grebstad gaining 19 places. But meanwhile, on the rear of the pitch, that's Sean Dobie who's gone round as Tony Bradley comes on through, and Joe Pinder does as well. But Sean Dobie getting it wrong after gaining a lot of places at the start of this race. The Clicks Racing driver now falling backwards, and well, he's got plenty of racing still to go, and anybody can make a mistake here at Le Mans. It's not how you start, it's how you finish, and the consistency you deploy to get to the finish line. But as he now tries to recover, meanwhile, we look from him back up to the top 2, and we can see him back the top 3, we should say, in the battle for P2. It's Jotautas on the left of your picture. Meanwhile, it is Phillips on the right. They make the way into Mulsanne on the braking. Walker's still there, and Ryan Walker being very patient as he comes out the corner, albeit now delivering on the fact that we can see that Phillips has gone a bit deep, and as a result, Walker now finds himself on the offensive. But of course, this all comes down to who gets the toe of the driver in front, and it looks like Jotautas trying to give a little bit of toe to Phillips. Now, why would he be doing that? Why would he prefer Phillips? Well, it's not because of teamwork. The idea being he wants Phillips to be back in the fight versus Walker, and if they go too wide into Indianapolis, they'll naturally take time off one another, and it enables Jotautas to do what Hammer has done and just run away if he can. But you can see Walker there on the inside versus Phillips. They're still too wide into braking into the main part of Indianapolis as they come on through. It's still close. Walker goes a little bit deep, tiny bit of contact by the looks of things, but it's only a brief feather-light touch, and as they make their way into our large corner, Phillips has fought hard for it. He's going to retake the place. Meanwhile, Willesee looking around the outside of Nargi, can't find it, and Corey Lazarus now into the fight as they power their way onwards towards the Porsche cars. We jump on board here with Corey Lazarus as the New Zealander powers his way up through the gearbox and heads down towards Porsche curves, but as he does, 1/10 between him and Willesee, with Walker also within reach. Now you've got Willesee defend on the inside here off camera, and was they break the way, and I don't think Lazarus is going to have enough space to play it out. Instead of what he'll do, try and cut back in. Walker goes a bit deep, but Walker's still too wide into the double left as they come on through, but you can see Lazarus trying to get his nose in, but Willesee there just simply putting the throttle down, saying no, if we are going to go for the move, we'll both go together. And as they come into the Corvette curves now, through the right into left, they all settle down line astern for a brief moment, but brilliant racing between the duo here as Lazarus backs off and decides to go again later in the day. But heading up towards the braking zone for the next corner and down towards where's the Ford chicanes. Well, onto the brakes they go, and it gives us a brief moment to say hello there to where's a good number of you in the chat who've joined us recently, including Simon B, also at Matty Wild, and well, welcome to you both. And to anybody who's tuning in who hasn't said hi in the chat, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. And even if you don't, I hope you're smiling and having a good day and enjoying the racing, as we definitely are here in the commentary booth, as Walker in P4 still under pressure from Willesee as he heads into one. But as they do, you can see that now Phillips starting to put some distance, and I think Walker had some difficulty in the last couple of corners, and it's just given Phillips a bit of breathing space. But as they come out and up towards what is turn 5, now downhill they go, of course, underneath the Dunlop billboard, and Corey Lazarus falling off the back of this and perhaps trying to go a little bit longer in the race. Of course, we don't know whether our drivers will need to make a pit stop at any point. There's no mandatory pit stop expected, so if there is any criticality in terms of they may not have enough fuel to get to the end of the race, then some drivers may be deciding to save some fuel early to give themselves some time. But Walker versus Willesee, and Walker was slow, run out of Tetra Rouge, Willesee on the inside, but Willesee did have a near wobble off circuit, and I think he's just about kept it together as they make their way on down up through the gearbox. They both go, charging a plenty here, and further behind we've got Chris Cole battling side by side here with Luke Andrews. It's Andrews on the left of your picture, Cole on the right of your picture, and well, the gold drive trying to cut his way around the outside of what is there, your silver leader, with Grebstad following pursuit behind, and then we have David Bigodite, but you can see the DC Sim Racing driver Cole just not able to find enough leverage to get the move done, and instead has to relent and relinquish the attack. But as they come on towards the next part of the Mulsanne straight, meanwhile trying to make a bit further ground further down the order, Craig Tillotson for FR20 Sim Racing, the Britain. Behind Kershaw, 2/10 is the gap as they make their way in towards the first Mulsanne chicane, and well, it's going to open up a bit here with Tillotson backing the car off, but you'll have another opportunity a bit later on to then try and go for the move. But meanwhile, as he brings himself back to bear and onto the second part of the straight, we do have an opportunity to take a look at what happened at the start of the race, and in particular what happened firstly to Jack Isherwood into turn 2. It's coming out of turn 3, and down there he went, and as he did, oh goodness me, and contact there, I think he was squeezed a little bit between what was the FR20 Sim Racing machine, as contact further still from what was then Glenn Humberstone, and Glenn Humberstone being tapped as he came on down, and the 88 Purple Drive having to get the car turned around as soon as possible, but Isherwood squeezed and Humberstone, the unfortunate victim, as Isherwood tried to get the car stopped. And then what happened to Alex Peregrina shortly after in the run down in towards the chicane? Well, of course, making this mistake, it was a lockup that we saw, and again playing out on screen for you, and that's why he lost so many places so early on. And then at the next chicane it got even worse, because as we look here to the follow-up replay, onto the brakes this time, battling with a silver class, and Sean Cranley Swash coming in like a missile there. And well, I think there's a bit more to that than meets the eye. Cranley Swash not normally coming in too hot on the brakes, perhaps he just missed his braking zone, or perhaps there was a tap to the rear of the car. Let's try and take another look back from his perspective on board. Well, I think it was a miss of a braking point there for Cranley Swash as we've come right into the heat of the moment. And well, for the HW Racing driver, not the happiest moment. Unfortunately for him, he's ended up in contact. And I think For him, it's just about getting it back together, but Cranny Swash, it would seem, had a bit too much speed under braking there, and well, just missing his braking point. 2 plus 2 goes together, and in the end, it was all scored with regards to contact with multiple cars. Now, as we return to the live pitch, we see Craig Tillotson making his way down towards Indianapolis. We have had some other incidents on subsequent laps to take a look back at in particular very shortly, including what was, I believe, an instance of one of our drivers recently, and that was for Sean Dobie. And on lap number 2, this is what happened to Sean Dobie in the run down Mulsanne. He's making his way into the first chicane, smooth run in, but as he comes out, he's got a collar on the outside, and Sean Dobie just getting the power down too soon. And I think now with the lack of traction control on the car, the rear wheels have just spun up too soon, particularly rear right from the driver's perspective, and it's kicked the car around, and the 159 driver will be kicking himself for that mistake. But everybody does it in these Cup cars. He's not alone in that regard, I can assure you. As they make the way onwards and down towards the next lap, we look back to our live pitch. Tillotson still trying to make his way past Alexander Wilford, but meanwhile we look from them up towards what is the battle for P2. Well, 12 minutes into this race, and Philipp Hammer has already put 6 seconds of daylight between himself and Haroldas Jotautas, who you're looking at, the over-limit racing driver from Lithuania. And as he heads out of 3 and up towards 4, 5, all the way down he goes, and well for Phillips, he's there by 4 attempts at the moment, but it's Phillips here trying to play the long game rather than going on the offensive and thinking about what he can do later on in the race, because of course we've seen in the 30-minute feature races, the tyres on these cars do wear very aggressively, particularly the rear tyres with that power deployment. And here with so many traction zones, more drivers are trying to get the power down out of the corner, where you can just take a little bit more life out the tyres, particularly in those 2nd and 3rd gear corners when you return from medium throttle to full throttle in a short instance. But meanwhile, further back, we've got Cameron Willesee looking to try and make the move on Walker for P4, and of course these two squaring off in the gold battle for some time, and Walker here really looking today to try and go for his best result of the season so far. Cameron Willesee also trying to notch up another great result to keep it in the hunt inside the top 5, with Walker in at P6, of course, trying to do everything he can in his order to break away from the rest of the pack and go hunting after the top 5. But as they make the way on through it, Willesee out the inside of the round gets the move done, but Walker, of course, knowing the fact there's 3 more extended straights for Indianapolis, and it's not about getting ahead now that matters, it's about getting ahead when you break into Indianapolis. That's where you want to be, as that's how you get the moves done and break away from the drive behind to then potentially move up to the next run in order. But as Walker tries to come back, of course, it's almost a segment of to me to you, in terms of the fact that Willesee at this point will go, okay, well, I passed you the first time, you pass me now, I potentially pass you again, albeit I think Cameron Willesee, in fact, will then play the chess move of simply waiting behind Walker as they head into Mulsanne corner and go for it out of Indianapolis. But of course, what stops him doing that is this man behind, potentially, of Corey Lazarus. If Lazarus starts to get close and puts the pressure on, then Lazarus will try and make 2 places in the space of 2 straights, and he'll jump the pair of them through that proceeding. But as they head on down towards the corner, you can see Willesee taking a peek up the inside. He thinks about it, but in the end does not go for it. And will Lazarus there not close enough to seize on the opportunity. Meanwhile, further back, we've got Håkon Grebstad now inside the top 10. The England Motorsports 37 in the gold class. That is what is P8 in the gold class, P10 overall, all over the back of David Biggerdine. And as they head up towards what will be Indianapolis corner, well, they have got some time to go. And meanwhile, we look here to the battle for P4 between Willesee and Walker, and this is where Willesee is trying to get the overspeed on Walker to get the job done. He's got the inside, but it's going to be 3 wide. It's going to also be on the left-hand side of your pitch. That's Lazarus, with Willesee moving over to the right. Walker backing off. Lazarus goes in, and it's a 2-for-1 through where's Corey Lazarus. It's a beautiful move there from the number 4 driver for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand, and all the number 4 notches P4 in classic fashion as he makes way towards Arnage and coming out and out towards what will be the Porsche Grebstad. If he can hold on to this, it will be one of the moves of the day, there's no doubt about that. But making his way down towards what is, of course, the Porsche Grebstad. That gap already starting to open up to half a second. It will close gradually, but I think he's done enough, and if he manages to break the gap open through the last portion of this lap, he's going to be safe, and he'll be chasing after what will be Charles Phillips next. As he comes on through the double left. Meanwhile, we look from him, very short as he charges past the station camera. Both drivers there are what it is, Lazarus and also Willesee tapping the wall and the dust going up. But meanwhile, Håkon Grebstad has found his way past what is, I do believe, David Big Light, and there's the confirmations up to P9. And as they make the way on and through the curves into the Corvette curves now, Grebstad's next target is 4.3 seconds up the road, and it is fellow DC Sim Racing driver from David Big Light to Chris Cole, and it will be for gold class position P7. as you see Cole there in the pictures. Meanwhile, new fastest lap of the race for Philipp Hammer, a 3:58.825. My good lord, Hammer right now is charging away at 1.2 seconds a lap over the field. That is how quickly the race leader is pushing this race, and I think if he's going all in, he's going to have to give it some pace back at the end of it. He's showing no signs of hesitating, pulling the trigger right now, but it's exactly what the doctors ordered for Philipp Hammer. Meanwhile, we look back here to the battle for P27 between Samuel Sproul and Glenn Humberstone. Of course, these two drivers having difficult starts to their day, and particularly Sproul having a bit of a major incident earlier on as they head on through. We're hearing that Alistair Hatcher has had to be towed to the pits. He is P30 at the moment, and I believe that Hatcher at this time, they're still trying to do repair work on the car as Humberstone here falling a bit further back after Sprout clearly making progress through Indianapolis, and the two of them staying together, albeit I think gradually Sprout is going to put a little bit more daylight. But as they head up towards the push curves, and meanwhile we look from them to a bit further up the road, and here is Joe Pinder, albeit I think that's Tony Bradley taking a bit of an inventive line going on through the Dunlop chicane. I think they're just coming a bit too hot and having to run the car off circuit. He will have to take a slow down, but of course he has to set it in a certain time, takes it on the run through turn number 4. I think some of the drivers down to go around the outside of him. Won't be best pleased with where he's chose to take it, but it's happened regardless as the 666 driver makes his way up towards Tetra Rouge, and no harm was done there. And of course it is a difficult one because when you have to serve those slowdowns quite quickly, and the fact you've got a whole sequence of corners coming at you, ideally want to get it out of the way as soon as possible. But Dovey and Pinder have moved up the road, and Bradley down to P at 22, but the privateer 9 is still plenty of time to go here, and he's definitely still in the tow of Dovey and Pinder as they make their way down the first part of the Mulsanne. But meanwhile we look up to Corey Lazarus, and we wasn't able to break away after that brilliant freeway fight into Indianapolis. He's fallen back into the battle for Wits P4 with Willesee and also Walker, so the trio run together, and just behind them is Luke Andrews in all of this. Meanwhile, up the road from them, side by side coming down into the Mulsanne corner, it's going to be Phillips on the inside versus Jotautas on the outside. All this battle is just letting Hammer break away, but right now these guys are relishing in it, there's no question about it, and we absolutely love it as well, as now Jotautas trying to get the overspeed on cutback here in the run up towards what will be Indianapolis in C behind. That's Corey Lazarus in P4 with a long line of cars following him, but as they all coming down, well, who's going to be the faster of the two? Who's got the less rear wing on the car? I think they've both likely gone for minimal rear wing here. They're pretty equal in terms of machine, and coming on through the second heat, Jotautas just pulling ahead slightly, gets to within 2 tenths ahead, and it's all about that cutback exit that's just giving him the advantage he needs to feel safe coming onto the brakes here back into P2. Meanwhile, further behind Cameron Willesee, P5, they're tucking in behind Corey Lazarus, albeit not patient. He wants to go on through as they make the way out of the left hand and down towards Arnaud. All 4 drivers there in the pack of Lazarus, Willesee, Walker and Andrews, all using a little bit extra room as they make the way out to the corner, putting 2 wheels on the scale. Got to be careful of that, of course, because it's a raised exit curve, and when you drop off that curve, it doesn't settle the car. But meanwhile, you can see that whilst these 5 squabble forward, it's P4 overall. Further behind, we do have Håkon Grebstad continuing to make progress here, chasing after David Vigardite and up towards the next sequence in towards the Porsche curves. And right now, Vigardite keeping him at bay, and is Grebstad potentially now thinking a little bit about strategy or just saving the car after pushing it hard in the early stages and wanting to give himself plenty of the car to work with in what will be the next few laps. As they make the way past the barrier there, we do look from them back to what is Joe Pinder. Joe Pinder being passed into Arnaud there, and that is Alex Peregrina on a recovery drive, of course, after having to go into the pits at the end of the first lap with all the damage that was picked up. But as Pinder builds up the speed, and meanwhile behind him, Sean Dovey doing everything he can in order to stay close. And we're looking up the inside here is Dovey. He's going to have the speed, but is he going to have enough distance for the run? Well, Pinder there certainly thinks he doesn't, as he just takes the natural racing line and says, I'm going to close the door at my own discretion, as they make the way through the curve sequence now. Bradley only 1.4 seconds off, so he's also trying to get close into this fight. But indeed, it is a battle for P10 in the silver class, and well, the final spot in the top 10 always holds a little bit of importance for a driver in a given class, given the fact you always want to be in the top 10 as a minimum. But meanwhile, we look from them up to what is P5 in the silver class, and this is Aaron Trester. He's P13 overall. Rob Zelby in the gold class, trying to go around outside to inside through Dunlop curve into the chicane of the same name, and as they do, well, it's going to be Zelby who moves up into P13 as he briefly fades into the Eva and returns from it as they make the way down the hill. Trester falls back, and he's now got what is there? Lewis Willisey only half a second off as we're hearing that Steve Kershaw is into the pit lane. I wonder for Kershaw whether there's some potential damage to the car. We're not quite sure on the story of what's happened to him, but what we can tell you is that car is now being so slow. Look at McConaughey move window. There's Tressler powers his way through. Tetcherugi's got Willisey still there half a second and trying to close, but Tressler will have the comfort of the fact he has the toe of Selby in front of him, and these guys almost 4 seconds off of Steve Hobbs up the road from them. Stephen Hobbs, he's known earful as they make the way down towards the next braking zone. Meanwhile, we look from them back up to what is the battle for P8 between Corey Lazarus and David Biggerdine, and well, in fact, it's not between Corey Lazarus and David Biggerdine. We should correct ourselves. It's the battle for P9 between what is there, David Biggerdine and Håkon Grebstad, with Lazarus going slowly. So in fact, we were right in the first instance. Lazarus falling backwards, and I believe there may have been a bit of an instant for Lazarus. In fact, we do have one on our replays coming up very shortly, but Corey Lazarus has lost out massively, and will a lot of tries gaining place inside the top 10. Biggerdine still trying to hold on to P8 overall, with Håkon Grebstad following him, and Grebstad like a bad rash here, but that rash not going away as they head through the chicane and down towards the Mulsanne corner. We're charging back up through the gearbox. Well, we can find out what exactly happens to Corey Lazarus, and here's the story. So making his way through turn number 5 into 6 through the S's, goes a little bit wide there, and that carries the car to the barrier, and then at that point we can't rejoin with everybody coming on through. Instead he has to slide his way through Tetcheruge, and well, with the fact he ran wide, I think it was a slowdown to add to his woes, and for Corey Lazarus it's been a knock to the barrier which will upset the left hand side of the car. Hopefully not too much damage to the air of the suspension, and then a subsequent slowdown onto the Mulsanne straight, and for Corey Lazarus that has cost him extremely dear, as meanwhile we do look back to Biggerdine trying to hold off Grebstad for P8. Here's Grebstad now on the inside. They're about to make it into Indianapolis corner, and well, through this final kick they go before they start to enter turn 18. Side by side, who's it going to be? I think Grebstad here will have the advantage, and Biggerdine will release the position. Indeed, it plays out in that fashion as now Håkon Grebstad moves to P8 overall. His next target will finally be Chris Cole, if he's able to break away from Biggerdine, but of course I think Biggerdine will be trying to do everything he can to stay with the Indian Motorsports driver for the simple reason that way it gives Cole every opportunity to guarantee a P7 overall, but more importantly what is P6 in the gold class, of the DC Sim Racing drivers trying to work together. But as they head up towards the next corners, meanwhile we do look from them up to what is P1, and here is Philipp Hammer still just in a world of his own there as he absolutely cuts a huge chunk out of the kink of turn 29. We've got to be careful. They want to pick up a slowdown given how much momentum he's got, but the gap to what is second place, and that shows you it in the fact we don't see Hammer in the camera there at long distance, as Haroldas Jotautas for over limit races still does have Phillips behind him, and Giles Phillips still staying with him as Hammer sets a new fastest lap of the race at the halfway point, which is a 3:58.015. Well, I can tell you one thing, Hammer may not have had the best start to the season in his title defence in the gold class, but ever since the last pair of rounds at Spa-Francorchamps, it's almost as if something has clicked in Hammer's mind, and well, we don't want that to stop, because right now we are seeing the Hammer that we saw in season 5, which is an absolute monster on circuit. But meanwhile, as we look from the battle to for P2 back to P4 driver Brian Walker, well, Walker, after all the fighting and fashion between himself, Lazarus and Willisey, well, Lazarus of course making that error, but it looks as though Willisey starting to fall away as they head up towards what is a turn at 5 and 6. Through the left into right they go, but definitely now Walker trying to make some headway, but again he'll need to be at least 1.5 seconds going on to what will be the Mulsanne straight in order to get that comfort zone, as Lazarus into the pit, Sean Dobie into the pit lane as well. Lazarus I think for repair work to the car, Sean Dobie maybe coming in for some work, although we're not quite sure of the story there, and we've also got Tony Bradley coming on in, so I do wonder if more drivers are potentially worried about the fact now there is going to be a need to take on some fuel, and potentially they're taking some tyres for safety, but either way, the longer you can go, if you can make it on a no-stop, it's going to save you a lot of time here, given the length of time you spend in the pits, the long pit lane entry. But as we do say hello there to Adam at 54G, who is cheering on the FR20 Sim Racing drivers, and well, right now, I think you'll be absolutely pleased to see Lou Andrews, P6 overall silver class leader, and currently holding what is a 7-second advantage over second place silver driver David Biggerdine down in P9, and well, in the camera shot you can see there, it's the second of the DC Sim Racing pink machines, and that is the perspective of Andrews to Biggerdine, with Cole the leading DC Sim Racing car just behind by 1 whole second. Well, Andrews definitely making himself felt here again as he now looks for a potential move on Willisey. as he breaks down into the second Mulsanne chicane, decides it's better to wait and looks to pounce perhaps in the run to Indianapolis. But as we also say hello there to David Bolcom, welcome to you, David. Great to see you tuning in, and I believe there's quite a bit of conversation with regards to the charge of Philipp Hammer, or as many are referring to him now as the alien in the field. And well, as I try to make the way on through Andrews right now, a bit of an alien in the silver class field in his own right, albeit I think the Bigger Ward and Hobbs in P2 through to P4 in the class, P9 through to P11. Overall, they'll all be thinking about ways they can potentially get a little bit closer to this battle. But meanwhile, as we do see the pack for P4 heading down towards Indianapolis, further back Grebstad with Bigger just behind him. But Grebstad is trying to close, but again on the straight. Again, the problem is with that pack in front of him, all in the toe of one another, Grebstad now has to do everything under his own impetus. He does not have anybody to give him a boost on the straight, unless of course Bigger jumps in front of him, or there's a bit of bump drafting going on, which of course is very tricky with these cars given how sensitive they are at the best of times on even the straights. But as he heads down in towards the next braking zone, well, it's going to stay as is. I think Bigger here just running with Grebstad. I think feeling comfortable. If Peter's going to do the best he achieves, well, he'll take that result. Indeed, it's ahead of Roxanne Marshall, and it will enable him to potentially jump back up into the lead of the championship after this round. As I try to make the way out of our large corner. Speaking of our silver class championship leader going into tonight, here is Roxanne Marshall in a bit of a lonely P15 overall, P7 in the silver class. Not really close to anybody and not really being attacked by anyone either, in the fact that we do have Lewis Willis, 12.5 seconds up the road almost, and meanwhile behind Wayne Basson, who you can see there in the rear of the picture. And Basson, as our cameraman takes a look at him, the FR20 Sim Racing driver, P16, P8 in the class at the moment, and gradually falling away from Marshall, not quite on the same pace. So therefore it is going to be quiet towards the bottom end of the top 20 and of course the top 10 of the silver class. But meanwhile, where there's potentially silent scoring there, it's loud and proud still in the battle for P4 overall and in the gold class. In fact, that's Andrews now trying to make it an overall P4 position. Luke Andrews has found his way ahead of Cameron Willisey, and as they come on down through the Porsche curves, we ride on board the rear bump here of the number 95 from Satellite Racing, Brian Walker, as he heads on to what is his 8th lap of the race conditions and heading all the way up towards turns 1 and 2. Now charging the way all the way towards the braking zone for the Dunlop chicane. What this time around for Walker, thinking about what is going to be his strategy for breaking off if he can, but I don't think he's really going to find a way, although a little bit of a wobble there, interestingly, from Andrews under braking, not too visible, but a bit of hesitation coming off the brakes from 2 into 3, and that caused Willisey to close up. In fact, Walker's been bought a little bit more space to play with here as he comes on through the S's, albeit Andrews now really started to get himself comfortable once again, so I think it might have just been a little bit of over-rotation off braking and then trying to settle the car, but it does go to show Andrews really pushing the tempo in the number 59 as they head up towards the Mulsanne Straight. And as they do, well, Willisey, they're still with him. Meanwhile, Chris Cole now 1.2 seconds back. He's still close, but not close enough to play a huge factor this time around in the slipstream battle. And well, these three all staying together of Walker, Andrews and Willisey. Cole falling back ever further, but I think Cole also maybe just simply lifting off the car and trying to save a little bit of fuel, alternatively save himself a bit of the run in the gearbox, because of the fact he will be gaining the tow. So long as he's within 2 seconds, he will fill that distance slipstream and he will be able to just simply cruise back up to the back of the group. 1.5 seconds again for Cole in the rear of the picture, and then you can see what is there Håkon Grebstad and David Bigger, and they are slightly closing on this group. Grebstad now 4.3 seconds. Albeit we do still have 3 more straights to go, including the one they're currently on, so it is a bit premature to say, but I get the finger Grebstad might be starting to yield a little bit of distance. My goodness me, that speaking of yielding, well, Andrews coming on through, Cameron Willisey as well, and I think there Ryan Walker being caught shy in the fact I don't think he expected to have was Willisey just absolutely charged at the inside, and with Walker making a bit of a mistake as a result of that, and that's going to cause Cole to have an opportunity here. Oh, it's going to be 2 by 2 as they make the way up towards Mulsanne corner, and well, Andrews charging for P4. He's no stranger to be inside the top 5 overall, given what happened at Spa last week, and as they make the way onto the brakes, Andrews on the inside. Meanwhile, Cole Cole versus Walker, and Cole on the inside here for P6. Walker drops back to P7, but I think this is all the calm before the storm as they make their way now up towards what will be Indianapolis. But you can see behind with that, Grebstad now within 4 seconds. So Walker having that mistake has cost him dear, and it may breathe even more motivation into Grebstad's chance to try and get into this group. But as we focus to the pair who are side by side, come through the second kink in towards Indianapolis. Andrew's still there on the inside, and will the FR20 Sim Racing purple car doing everything in its power to stay one nose ahead. Into the braking zone they go, and as they do, behind Walker's jump back ahead of Cole in the run into the braking zone, but Andrew's holding firm in P4. And coming up towards the braking zone for Arnaud. Well, now for Andrews, what he's going to be thinking about, I think, is I'm going to try and hold on to this to the end of the race. And well, good on him, of course, wanting to put one over the gold class. And I think in return, Willisey will think, right, you're on if this is the way it's going to go. Because I think with Jotautas and Phillips currently 14.5 seconds up the road and continue to just gradually move away with their pace being on average 1 second a lap faster at this time. It really now is becoming the fight to be best of the rest in P4 outside the overall podium. But as they make their way in towards the push curves, meanwhile we look back to Lewis Willisey, who we jump on board with here as he heads up toward the aforementioned sequence of corners, and we'll in behind what is there, Steve Hobbs, getting ready to go on to the brakes here. He's going to be close, but is he going to be able to find a move? I don't think so, as Willisey does go for a nice early apex there, sends the car up nicely. Hobbs goes a little bit deep, coming off into the double left. Hobbs, of course, has the track line authority in terms of racing line through these corners. He will dictate the pace, goes a bit deep again. I think Hobbs there just slightly out of rhythm and momentum as a result now, but Willisey goes a bit deep through the left-hander into the Corvette curves, and therefore now it's going to be Tresler behind, who is getting closer and closer as we ride on board the rear here of Lewis Willisey's car. Tresler looking to move, but he can't quite find it. The two Tresler Motorsport teammate drivers look to go side to side against one another, but in the end, I think Tresler noticing the fact that you don't want to be battling with your teammate through this sequence of corners, let alone elsewhere on the circuit. You want to work together as they make their way onwards towards another lap. As they do their battling for P4 in the silver class, with Hobbs holding on to the much coveted position as they come up through Dunlop Curve. And Willisey here getting very close. Will he peel out to the inside here for a move? He thinks about it, but he's not quite got enough in the brakes in order to get it done. We still do have what is a grand total of 9 minutes to go. And well, whilst we do have 9 minutes to go, we've got Willisey here looking around the inside to outside into the S's. And as he comes on down, well, it's going to be Hobbs who holds the line. 2 wide on entry, 2 wide on exit. And as Willisey carries the momentum, it's going to be close. Hobbs goes to the grass, and as he does, can he recover the car? Well, now it's a run to the wall. Hobbs has gone round. It's a disaster for the FR20 Sim Racing driver, and they're giving it everything he could. But I think just trying to make it too wide all the way through and carry the speed, the two did not marry up, and in the end, he's found the car marrying with the barrier instead. And now he's going to try and limp it on around with Roxanne Marshall, finally seeing some company for some time, as we can see here the Silver Championship leader coming up quick. And I think for Hobbs, it's going to be another place lost very shortly. Now, as our drivers make the way on down, we do want to take a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, to let you know that voting for Driver of the Day is now available. If there's been somebody who's impressed you today, or one driver who's had a stand-up moment that you'd like to give a nomination for, you can do so by using the link that's been provided in the YouTube chat. You can see it's just been posted there, and the Driver of the Day vote will close as of midnight tonight, British Summertime or UTC +1. So therefore, get your votes in, as we definitely want to hear your thoughts on the Driver of the Day. Of course, last time out at Spa-Francorchamps, we had a tie between our drivers of the day, where it was Luke Andrews in the silver class and Karen Willisey in the gold class, who both picked up 30% of the vote. But will we see a returning name in terms of Driver of the Day, or will we see a new driver take the name of preference? Well, we'll have to wait and see, as Marshall here looks up the inside versus Hobbs. I think in a wounded car, Hobbs will let that go and try and come back later on. But meanwhile, we talked about Håkon Grebstad trying to close up to the battle for P4. We can see the battle for P4 in the foreground of the camera, but what is proof in the pudding is the fact that Grebstad has finally found his way to Cole, and he is past Chris Cole as they make the way down towards Indianapolis now. Cole is there behind him. Now, has he got enough, or is Cole just simply not going to be able to come back? Grebstad goes defensive. He knows, I think, Grebstad, that if he can carry this on at the rate he is, and he can break away from Cole after the corners, he will be able to catch up to that P4 battle. But Cole gets ahead, then Grebstad immediately gives it back. And I think in doing so, what Grebstad's going to be priding himself on is the better run out of Arnaud, as we jump on board here with the Norwegian. As he rolls away from the corner, Cole goes deep and he locks it up there as he puts it into the gravel. And I think Cole trying to stop the car from going to the wall. A near disaster for Cole. And David Biggerdike will come on through as a result, but Cole just missed his braking point. David Biggerdike comes on through as well as our tries now make their way up towards what will be the Porsche curves. And as they do, well, here is Cameron Willis. He's found his way back ahead of what is, I do believe, Luke Andrews. And as they make their way through the double left, Willis and Andrews continues to go down to the wire in terms of this battle. And we'll given the fact we've not seen any further pit stops and tries, I think most pit stops have been for damage, and therefore this will be a no-stop race come the conclusion for all of the top tries as they make their way on around. But as they head up towards what is there, the Corvette curves, and onwards towards the Ford chicanes. Well, Willisey right now, I definitely think, feeling the pressure, and not from a source he expects it to come from today, as they make their way through the left into right of 30 and 31, and the same again through 32 and 33 to complete this lap and go on to their 10th under race conditions. But as they do there, and well, now making their way up towards the Dunlop curve, you can see it, Ryan Walker's still there with him 7/10 behind and staying true to the word of getting into that fight when he can later on. I think Walker taking a bit of a breather, but meanwhile Alexander Wilfert now trying to make some moves. Of course, the lead Team Germany driver of Hammer off in the distance, but meanwhile Wilfert battling side by side with Joe Pinder to try and gain another overall position. And well, as he comes on through there, move on the inside into the Porsche curves he goes, and Joe Pinder loses next for overall position, and Wilfert moves up into P18 overall as he now comes on through to the end of the corner six. Pinder looking very tight to the apex there on the run into what is turn number 27, but the car in return not quite giving the speed and therefore losing the leverage as they come out of the Corvette curves and now into the final four corners. But indeed, as their battle starts to subside, meanwhile one driver continues to try and make his way a bit further up the order as he clears the Dunlop chicane with 8 minutes to, well in fact not 8 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go. There's we do the quick mental maths again. The Avatar racing driver Alex Peregrina, who after an opening lap mistake, the lock up into the first two Mulsanne chicanes and then being caught up in the subsequent incident at the second chicane. Well, for Peregrina, it has been a day to forget in terms of being up there at the very top, but his recovery to P9 in the gold class right now will yield him a small degree of result, but I think we are going to see quite a swing in the championship momentum, given that Hammer is leading by 11.5 seconds at this time, and Hammer is showing no signs of slowing down. But in return, what we should point out is that the fastest lap has gone to Alex Peregrina in the 28, a 3:57.17, as that's also been picked up by Medmo there in the YouTube chat. So Peregrina is pushing hard. I think that is an indicator of what he could have brought to the table today. And well, perhaps we have been denied a battle between the two championship leaders in the gold class of Peregrina and Hammer. But in return, what it does mean is that we'll expect Peregrina to come back absolutely fighting fit next pair of rounds at Silverstone. And indeed, when you do have Jotautas in P2 currently, as we do look to the Over Limit Racing driver who continues to hold Charles Phillips at bay, but the Phillips GP machine is not going anywhere away anytime soon. I wonder where Jotautas right now will be feeling as though, okay, it's a P2, but I can't quite settle down here because of the fact I've got the pressure, but this puts me right back into the thick of that championship fight in quick order. Of course, Hammer will gain the most here as they make the way in towards Indianapolis. But we have got a gold top three that is getting closer and closer as a result of this round. But meanwhile, looking back, well, we do have that freeway fight for P4 overall, and Cameron Willisey on the outside versus Andrews. You can see Walker trying to push Andrews along a little bit as they look towards the braking zone for Indianapolis now. It's going to be Willisey side by side with Walker. Walker backs out. He knows he doesn't want to really overcommit for it. They'll have one more lap after this, and that will be the lap where we'll potentially see the do-or-die move from one of these drivers that could make the difference. But as they make the way down into an arch at this time, Walker stays put behind as we jump on board the nose of the satellite racing machine on the front bump here as he tries to chase down Willisey and Andrews, and well, all the way they go in the run up towards the Porsche curves as we stay on board here. Of course, the interesting part of the run into these curves is the fact he's got double the portion of dirty air to deal with Walker, but I don't think this is going to stop. As you can see, Willisey there taking a little bit of a peek, trying to get into Andrews' head in terms of making Andrews think a move's going to come out of nowhere, but Andrews are too wise to it as they come on through the double left, and Walker just able to hammer the apex there, carrying so much speed, and Willisey having to back off behind Andrews. This is ebbing and flying as Philipp Hammer sets a new fastest lap race of 3:56.825. I don't think he wants to be denied the perfect day today in the race. Meanwhile, Walker's still there behind and Willisey pushing on, but it's not working out for either of them as Andrews holds firm in P4, and we will have one more lap in this brilliant battle for P4 to the very end. as they head on down towards the final 2 corners for the penultimate time. Out the forward chicanes they go, and behind them Håkon Grebstad is getting closer. He's now only 2 seconds behind. You can see him there, and if he can get within 1.8 seconds going onto the Mulsanne straight, he will be able to gradually gain the toe, because of course you need to try and pick up the draft, and not just one car in the trio but also the second car, and it gives you that neutralisation effect whereby they won't be gaining on you but you'll gain on them instead. But as they make the way out to the Dunlop chicane, Grebstad will throw everything at this, but it's final lap of the day, and as they make the way up towards turn number 6 into the S's they go and out. Well, who is it going to be in the battle for P4? Will it be Andrews, the silver leader, who brings on home an overall top 4? Will it be Cameron Willesee in the gold class, or Ryan Walker in the gold class? They're both battling for P4 in the gold class between them as well. And further back in terms of battles, well, we've not got too much else happening elsewhere at this time, but we also do have a growing battle for P2 over in the gold class between Haroldas, Jotautas for over limit racing and Phillips GPs. Giles Phillips has been waiting a very long time. He has sat there, he has been patient, he has not grumbled at all. And will this now be the lap where he pounces as they power their way down towards the second chicane? Well, Phillips, if he's going for it, he is waiting until Indianapolis. He is not revealing any cards right now, and I think with the way he's behaving, Jotautas will know immediately when to expect the move. But I say that, and Phillips now looks up the inside. Jotautas turns in, he gives the space though, but Phillips there leaving it to quite late, and now I think that's going to play some mind games with Jotautas in, probably thinking, well, when is Phillips going to go for it now? Is he going to go for it here into Mulsanne, or is he just going to wait for Indianapolis? I like what Phillips is doing there. He's started to just simply unpeel the layers of the proverbial overtaken onion, if you will, in the fact as you go deeper and deeper into the layers here. Well, Phillips is just constantly itching for that move, swinging to the inside there, and well, now Phillips, as he makes his way on in, Jotautas just cannot seem to find a way to keep Phillips settled behind him anymore. Instead, it's one more run, and Jotautas covered that off nicely, covered the corner as well, but it's going to be 3 attempts. They charge their way all the way on towards the turn at number 18 in towards Indianapolis they go, and Phillips inching ever closer as we jump on board here with the number 12 car. He's win 1.5 attempts, still gaining, getting closer and closer. Jotautas defends the inside, and once they get ready to battle on the brakes here, it's going to be close. Phillips on the outside, Jotautas on the inside. Phillips gets a nose ahead, they go too wide into the corner. Phillips stays on the outside to inside. Jotautas turns it in, but Phillips just has not got enough. He can't get fully alongside. Now will there be a compromise line for either of them coming into Arnage? I don't think so. They stay battling as they were, but Phillips is still within 4 attempts. They going out. This is thrilling racing on the final lap here for P2, with Philipp Hammer running away. Well, for these two, finishing P2 is going to feel like the race win when all is given and accounted for. But coming up towards the Porsche curves, I think Phillips may have just used a bit too much. Arnage right now, he is falling back to a degree, and he's not closed up enough in the toe to consider the move here. But as they make the way on through the Porsche curves now, meanwhile one driver's already cleared them, is this man. And well, the Team Germany driver, there's a reason there's a 1 on that car, not just in terms of position but door number, and because of season 5 he dominated when he was up front and found himself clearing the competition away, and it was a rocky start to the season, but we saw signs of him bouncing back at Spa-Francorchamps 2 weeks ago. And as he makes way for the final 2 corners, it's a return to the top step for Team Germany's Philipp Hammer as he crosses the line in an absolutely demolition derby round of 13.5 seconds ahead of Haroldas Jotautas, absolutely destroying the field in terms of the class delta. But meanwhile, Jotautas will not be concerned about that. All he'll be concerned about is P2 for over limit races. He holds on to P2 ahead of Giles Phillips P3, and as they cross the line there in a brilliant battle together for Luke Andrews, it's going to be a win in the silver class, but it's going to be more than that, because it's going to be P4 overall, and he has taken the scalps of both Cameron Willesee and Ryan Walker on the way. Cameron Willesee P5, Ryan Walker P6, Håkon Grebstad P7, and a great drive from the back of the field to P7 at the end, and only at 1.5 seconds off the top 6 in the end, with David Big Light runner up in the silver class, P8 for UKSimRacing. Chris Cole P9 there as he crosses the line behind his teammate Jack Wood P10. What is Rob Selby finishing best the rest in P11 ahead of Lewis Willesee, and it'll be Aaron Tress who crosses the line in due order just ahead of Alex Peregrina. And Peregrina, it all went wrong for at the start, but a recovery to P14 was the best he could get out the car. Roxanne Marshall with difficulties as well, P15, P6 in class for the 24-hour Punty People drive ahead of Steve Hobbs P16, and then it will very shortly be What is Wayne Basson making his way to the timeline as he comes on through here for FR20 Sim Racing, and as he heads on through, well, for the number 9 driver, I think he'll feel as though he's got the points on the board, and that's the most important thing. It has not been his day today, as Alexander Wilfert will then come down through the final couple of corners, and the 79 driver, well, he may not have the glory that his teammates had, but he still brought it on home in 10th place in the gold class, P18 overall. Joe Pindle will come home P19. Ignium Motorsports there in the 22, in which P9 in the silver class, and weaving that across the line, happy with the fact he's made it another silver top 10. And Steve Kershaw still heading to the line here as he makes his way down the round through the Ford chicanes. He's got Corey Lazarus giving up pursuit as they come on down, but through the left into right, and we're heading on through there. Steve Kershaw, I think, will be safe to line to round off the top 20 overall. P10 in the silver class, Corey Lazarus P21, as we see up there the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand car limping to the line, and what I think there's some damage still on the car from earlier. Sean Cranisosh P22 ahead of Ricardo Jimenez, and then Sean Dovey P24, the Eclipse Racing driver from Scotland, with that early spin costing him considerably. Samuel Sprout will finish at P15 for Blackout Motorsport New Zealand in the 606, and it's Tony Bradley at P26 ahead of Craig Tillotson, who's still yet to get to the line, ladies and gentlemen. He's got a way to go, but still the FR20 Sim Racing driver pushing on as he makes his way on down. And we do want to take this moment while Tillotson's heading in towards the Porsche curbs to remind you that if you haven't cast your vote for driver of the day yet, you'll see that it's Matty Wild who has posted a reminder there for you. The link available. Do let us know who was your driver of the day today. Was it Philipp Hammer with his dominant display up front with a 14.7 second win in the end in the overall and gold categories? Or was it potentially Luke Andrews with his silver win and hold on to P4? Or was it nobody inside the top 10? Perhaps instead it was potentially Lewis Willison for a run towards P4 in the silver class, P12 holding off Aaron Tressler to the line, or could it even be the recovery drive done by Håkon Grebstad, who came from P30 up to P7 all the way from P28, we should correct ourselves, to P7. Will let us know in voting for driver of the day. But Craig Tillotson heads to the line there. Give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He's made it for FR20 Sim Racing and bringing it on home in what is P27 but P14 in class, and Glenn Humberstone the final finisher on the lead lap and finisher of the race, P28 there in number 212 8-Tip Racing Team Purple Machine. A difficult day today with the car crabbing that across the line, but still he's been able to get it on home, and what a race it has been. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the race results, subject to any insurers inquiries. Philipp Hammer taking the win in the end for Team Germany by 14.7 seconds over Haroldas Jotautas for Over Limit Racing, and then a further 2 tenths down. Giles Phillips bringing on home P3 for Phillips G3, and well, what a race it was between the two of them, and with Phillips giving it all on the final lap, but not quite able to make the move stick as they made their way into Indianapolis. Luke Andrews, silver class winner there, P4 for FR20 Sim Racing Purple, and well, the running joke that was between myself and what was excuse me, here's a teammate from FR20 Sim Racing of Stephen Hobbs going into tonight with regards to their carbon livery. The special for Le Mans was perhaps the livery might give Andrews a boost to speed. Of course, they do say racing stripes give you an extra 5 horsepower, and I think the special livery may have just given Andrews a little bit of a boost as well. It's definitely shown, with Karen Willesey just behind P5, completing the top 5 overall for Willesey Racing, and then Ryan Walker P6, just missing out on the top 5 overall, but P5 in the gold class for Satellite Racing in a great race for Walker and one of his strongest performances of the season. Håkon Grebstad, having started from the very back of the field, making up 21 places to finish P7. The Ignium Motorsports right in the end, only a second off of the battle for P4 come the checkered flag, and that goes to show the pace he was bringing on through without a qualifying lap. And then David Biggerdike P8 there, runner up in the silver class of DC Sim Racing, ahead of Chris Cole P9 there and his teammate, and then Jack Ward P10 for Willesey Racing to complete the top 10, and with that also the run of the silver class podium, which consisted of Andrews, Biggerdike and also Ward. P11, Lewis Willesey there, best the rest of Tressler Motorsport ahead of teammate Aaron Tressler, with Alex Peregrina P13 for Avatar Racing, and then Roxanne Marshall P14 for 24-hour punty people, in a difficult day for the championship leader. I think the championship will swing now to David Biggerdike for the next pair of rounds, but you can imagine that Marshall will be looking to bounce back as soon as possible, and then Wayne at Basson P15 for FR20 Sim Racing. Rob Selby at P16 for Shell V-Powered race team with some great moves in the midfield throughout the race, battling with the silver drivers. And it was Alexander Wilfer at P17 for Team Germany, with behind him then Joe Pinder at P18 and Steve Hobbs and Steve Kershaw rounded off the top 20 for FR20 Sim Racing and Night and Day Racing together. Corey Lazarus, P21, the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver, having a difficult day. Indeed, the whole team having a difficult one with Sean Cranley Swash, Ricardo Jimenez, Sean Doby between Lazarus and his teammate Samuel Sproul, who finished P25, and Le Mans has not been kind to the New Zealand outfit. Tony Bradley, P26, the privateer, ahead of Craig Tillerston from FR20 Sim Racing, and then Glenn Humberstone for ATEC Tech Racing Team Purple, completing our runner drivers who finished on the lead lap, and he got to the checker flag with Alistair Hatcher and Jack Isherwood at P29, P30, and I do believe that it will be Hatcher who will be classified as a finisher as he completed over half the race distance, but Isherwood meanwhile after retiring what was 4 laps into the race, it may be a DNF as a result. But 30 drivers started, 28 finished at the checkered flag, and what a race it has been, ladies and gentlemen, no doubt about it. And whilst the racing is complete, of course, this show is not quite complete yet, because what show at UK Sim Racing would be complete without post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers? In fact, those interviews will be coming out in approximately 10 to 15 minutes time, and whilst you are waiting, of course, do make sure you vote for your driver of the day, take a brief breather, perhaps go grab yourself a cup of coffee, because we'll be back in 10 minutes for the interviews and you won't want to miss them. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is now time for our post-round interviews. And well, what a race it has been today, and we're going to jump straight into our interviews by starting off with DC Sim Racing's David Biggerdike in the silver class in the number 13. David, as you join me now, it looked tough out there from start to finish, but a P2 in class come the end. You must be absolutely pleased given the test that Le Mans presents.
Yeah, can't complain. Seem to be collecting P2s at the moment in the feature or in the one race we had on this one. So yeah, it was a good race. I made one small mistake at the start, which pushed me behind Luke, and then he just seemed to be in a slipstream train, and I couldn't catch him. Caught him a little bit towards the end, but just didn't have enough to get it to the back of that train.
Now, it's always going to be tough out there at Le Mans, given the relative pace that you have to play from lap to lap and straight to straight. But started off in qualifying, we did see from yourself quite an interesting qualifying session. The fact that early on, it seemed as though you and a number of drivers were on course in the silver class to be well inside the top 10 and split in the gold field. Just take us through how qualifying evolved for you at an individual level.
I like the open qualifying session. It just adds a little bit more strategy to qualifying. I did kind of two very. I did one quite slow warm up lap, as everybody did, and then I had somebody have a mistake in front of me on my fast lap, so I just did another slow out lap, and then I got quite lucky with the tow. I managed to get a tow on both parts of the Mulsanne, before and after the chicane, and that helped massively. And then I pitted and went for a low fuel run, and I was on for a below 58, a 358 minus, but I had a mistake at the very last part of the track. So I probably could have got myself P1 with the pace, but more mistake. But no, it was nice to be far up the grid, because then you avoid any issues in the midfield, don't you? So it's nice to be out of the way of that and not have to worry about that.
Oh, indeed. Having that confidence going into the race, of course, we saw you start from what was P7 on the grid, and being a bit of a slow start versus Cameron Willesee, who seemed to jump around you very quickly, you soon found yourself settling down into the slipstream train, but it looked as though the top 7 were always just going to gradually creep away.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen, and my plan was to try and hold the slipstream as much as possible, and sort of towards the end of the lap I was a bit greedy on the throttle, and I had a small moment which put them ahead of me and put me out of touch of that slipstream train, and then Luke managed to keep hold of it, and he's quick enough to battle with the gold guys, so that helped him pull away from me, and that was kind of then my race. I was just trying to catch that train. I didn't have anyone close behind me. I didn't have any battles. It just kind of turned into a bit of an endurance stint, really, of just hitting my lap time.
Oh, indeed. But as the race went on, I have to ask, was there a bit of communication going on between yourself and teammate Chris Cole? Because Håkon Grebstad started to get closer and closer, and it looked as though in the end, well, the pair of you were trying to find a way to maintain your positions and not let the Indian Motorsport car come charging through.
There wasn't any communication, actually. I try not to talk in the race because it distracts me too much. So I think Chris made a small mistake, or he was impeded by somebody in front of him, which put him off, which is why he ended up behind. But he was in his own battle. It's good for him to be battling in the top 10 like that, to try and get points in the gold, because very difficult scoring points in the gold class. So I wouldn't have asked him to come back anyway.
Oh, most definitely, and of course every point critical. But with regards to coming back to yourself and over the race, how did you find the conditions out there? Because we saw in qualifying drivers really struggled to improve. It looked like it was a bit of a proverbial ice rink, with the ambient temperature only being 18 degrees centigrade. How did it feel for you in the race, as we did see you had a bit of a mistake early on?
Yeah, I think I misjudged the grip early on. The grip seemed to come as the race went on, and the rubber was put down. The grip definitely improved as that went on, and the tyres didn't degrade as much as I expected either. But I tend to be quite sensible on my tyres. I think this is the mistake I make here, that I can see on my on my bit. I don't know how far behind I am, but it's just a small mistake, and that was enough to put me back. So to only finish kind of 5 seconds behind behind Luke. If I hadn't have made that mistake, I think it'd have been a race-long battle with him.
Oh, indeed. And whilst we were denied that, of course, you still had to keep your head down all the way from start to finish. And what enables you to keep that level of concentration high here at Le Mans, given the fact you spend almost 80% a lap full throttle with these Porsche Cup cars? You have some very heavy braking zones, and you can never afford to get it wrong at any moment.
No, that's it. With this car, if you make a small mistake like I did there, it bites you, and that's why I enjoy driving it and the challenge that it presents. So you've got to just stay focused on your braking points, and at points I was braking a little bit earlier than I normally would, because I knew that there was no point overdriving the car because I was never going to catch, and I had the pace to maintain to third in class behind me. So I just picked my lap time that I knew I could comfortably drive to, and stuck with that, really.
Well, it worked out very well for yourself. In fact, it's worked out so well that when we get a quick update on the Silver Class standings going into the next pair of rounds, you're now level on points, 100 each between yourself and fellow championship leader Roxanne Marshall. How are you feeling after the return, given the fact now you're going into the second half of the season and, well, the championship is wide open?
Yeah, it's good when it's close, isn't it? And I know Luke's not far behind either, and he seems to be the kind of in-form driver with his, I think he's had 3 wins in a row if you count the kind of sprint race previously as well. So he's obviously collecting a large number of points at the moment. But it's very easy to make a mistake in this car. So I think I've just got to continue doing what I've done in the last few rounds, where I was just driving to the pace that I know I can drive at, and trying to stay out of trouble. But it's good to have a kind of three-way battle. I don't think Jack Ward's too far behind either. So it's still wide open there.
Oh, most definitely. With Luke Andrews only 4 points off yourself and Marshall, and then Ward being another, what is 19 points off. Like you say, it's wide open and it's anybody's game. And, well, you'll be looking to be on your A game, surely, when you head to Silverstone next week. Yeah,
so obviously Silverstone's a fun track to drive. It can be quite understeery in this car from what I remember previously. So trying to find that setup where the car wants to turn in, and the track's wide enough to be able to have some good battles as well, so hopefully it'll be a good couple of rounds there.
Well, we do look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in the UK in a week's time. But just before we let you go, David, is there anybody you'd like to give a thank you or a shout out to live on the broadcast this evening?
Just thank you to my teammate again for being there, and we obviously bounce set up ideas off each other and things like that, so that's always useful to have. And then my partner's hectically packing in the other room because we're about to head off for the weekend. So yes, he's got the patience for me.
Oh, well, that's brilliant to hear. And by the sounds of things, you've got a nice breakaway for the bank holiday weekend to go with a superb result today. David, it's been a pleasure having you join me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on a P2 come the end of the racing today, and we look forward to seeing how you get on at Silverstone in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul. Cheers.
All the best. So hearing there from David Biggerdike, the silver class driver from DC Sim Racing, who in his own words, if it hadn't have been for a spoiled final qualifying now, he could have been right up there and potentially on pole with a sub 58, but still it wasn't to be. And in the race, in a similar cadence, after hooking up with the lead slipstream pack at the start, a small mistake out of Nage cost him dear, as we saw on camera, and well, in the end having to settle down. And after that early mistake, never putting a foot wrong and just running in a peaceful P2 in the silver class and battling for what was a P7 through to P8 overall, and find himself in the end taking what was at the 8th place position. Well, definitely for the DC Sim Racing driver now joint leader in what is the championship with his silver class peer. It is definitely going to be an intriguing one all the way to the conclusion, because he'll be putting his head down and thinking one thing and one thing only, and that is when's the next opportunity to go on the attack and take that championship lead for his own. We'll have to wait and see. But speaking of waiting, well, we have had another driver patiently waiting for their interview, and it will be none other than what is Ryan Walker, as we get ready to hear from the man in the satellite racing at 95 car. And well, it has definitely been some time since we've heard from him as he gets ready to join us. But of course, we want to hear his perspective on what has been a very strong set of performances today, and definitely I think one that he's not going to forget in a hurry in terms of how the racing has worked out. But as he joins me now, Ryan, it's been quite some time since we've last spoke, and it's a pleasure to have you join me tonight in the interview room. But what a performance for yourself. P5 in the gold class, P6 overall, and we've got to see you put on a defensive battling masterclass versus Cameron Willesee and Luke Andrews. You've had a lot of fun tonight by the looks of things.
Yeah, that was epic fun. I really enjoyed that. I kind of said to myself when the quick guys up at the front pulled away, I thought I'll just do my thing, and if someone gets a run on me, don't fight them too hard. Yeah, that was good fun battling. I think it was Corey, Cameron, and I can't remember who else in the other stages. That was a good battle. We were swapping around pretty much. And then obviously Corey had his issue and they hit the wall, so that was another position gain from him, but from another car. But it was good fun racing Cameron and Luke Davis, I think it was, towards the end of the race. And again, just say to myself, just do my thing, and if I can't get by them, just settle for P6. And yeah, really happy with that result, considering I was struggling for pace and practice at the start of the week. So, but got some driver coaching from a teammate and who's raced around here a lot, and I think that definitely helped find me some pace, and happy to come away with a P6 result and P5 in the gold class.
Oh, indeed. And in qualifying, we saw for some time it looked as though it was almost going to be a second row start, but in the end just slightly pushed to P5 in the closing stages. How did qualifying feel for you? Was it the perfect lap that you could achieve, or was there a bit more out there?
I think I was happy with a 58.5, but I think I could have gone quite slightly quicker, but I think I was just a little bit too cautious into the final couple of chicanes, or the last chicane rather. But yeah, 58.5 was about, or 58 in general was probably about as quick as I was going to go. But that put me P5 in the grid, and yeah, the qualifying lap and the closing stages of qualified, it felt felt like one of those laps where you just when you hook it all up and it all came together, and yeah, it was a nice lap.
Oh, a nice lap translated in what was a great opportunity at the start. And the race started, looked a bit hectic, and particularly the scramble to try and stay with the leaders of Hammer, Jotautas and Phillips. Just take us through what it's like to have that first run to the Mulsanne Straight.
Yeah, I was expecting myself to be not terrified, but just kind of I wasn't really sure what to expect. Obviously, with you've got the slipstream and the massive overspeed, and I was expecting it to be not meant in a bad way, but I was expecting it to be a bit of a game of temp and bowling or pinball. But actually, everyone was really, really clean, and yeah, credit to everyone that was from where I was up at the front for everyone being really clear and being sensible.
Indeed, and it was a sensible start, and then we started to see a bit of a break in the field, and particularly yourself, Corey Lazarus, Cameron Willesee and Luke Andrews becoming locked together in that group. And of course, over 42 minutes of racing, it's very strategic in terms of you're waiting ready for that final lap. So how do you sort of manage it? Because at some moments it's a bit of a to me to you want to be ahead, and then the next corner you're behind. Just what was your focus in that in terms of how you positioned yourself?
Yeah, the final lap, I ended up falling back from Luke and Cameron. I think towards the end of the race, I can't remember who it was. I think it was maybe just the massive overspeed that caused them to overrun the entry into the second Mulsanne chicane. I think was it Luke Andrews, or I think it was Luke Andrews at one point. But again, the last lap, I just told myself just to try and close that gap back down, and managed to do that. And I think I just said to myself again, if I can close them down, I'll try and just wait patiently and see if anything happens. But made a little bit of a mistake and lost a bit of time to Cameron in front of me. But yeah, it's just one of those things. But P6 in the end and P5 in the gold class is still a really good result, and especially around Le Mans where it can be hectic at times. So I'll take that, and I have to say credit to Cameron and Luke as well. That was fantastic stuff.
Well, indeed, it was an absolute spectacle to see you as a group, a trio, battling hard all the way to the very end. And of course, with that result, you've now given yourself a bit of a buffer in the hunt for P6 in the Gold Class Championship. You hold on to the aforementioned position by 15 points over Phillips GP's Charles Phillips. And we head to Silverstone in a week's time. How are you feeling for a return to the UK?
Yeah, I don't think I've raced around Silverstone, but not with the Cup car. So that'll be another track to add to learn with this car, or basically another track to learn in this car anyway. So it should be a good one. I do like Silverstone. I've raced around here in the past and around Silverstone in the past, and it's been really good fun. And yeah, just going into Silverstone with the same plan as always, just aiming to finish both races and pick up the points.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on at Silverstone in a week's time. But just before we let you go, Ryan, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Absolutely, yeah. First of all, you, Paul, for putting on the broadcast. They're always good to watch back. Secondly, the UK sim racing community for putting on the Porsche Cup series. It's probably one of my favourite series to race in, and I love the community in general. And lastly, to the team Satellite Racing, our sponsors, Maradna Selling Engineer and Nemesis Lab. That's about it.
Well, Ryan, it's been a pleasure to have you join me in the interview once again. Congratulations on a top 5 finish in the Gold Class and also the P6 finish in the overall standings. And we look forward to seeing how you get on at Silverstone in a week's time.
Cheers, Paul. Take care.
All the best. So hearing there from Ryan Walker in the Gold Class, and always a great positive spirit when you speak to Ryan, and the fact seeing all the joy shine through in his voice. And well, he had an absolutely brilliant race today, battling hard as we see in the pictures here with Cameron Willesee and also Corey Lazarus, and later on Luke Andrews would get into the fray and was quite not able to bring on home what was the coveted P4 in the class, and overall still enjoying that back and forth tug of war, if you will, in the slipstream battling. And a small mistake in it cost him slightly dear, as we see him going 3 wide into what was Indianapolis. It was, of course, Corey Lazarus who gained the advantage this time, but a very tactical run. And I wonder if Silverstone, where we'll see Walker continue this momentum forward, particularly now he's started to make a break in the hunt for P6 in the Gold Class Championship. Well, we come from Ryan Walker to another driver who's battling hard for P6 in the Gold Class Championship, and that is Charles Phillips in the Gold Class. And as he gets ready to join me, it's going to be interesting to hear his perspective on what was today a return to great form that we saw at the very start of the season, and particularly with a P2 in qualifying and a P3 overall. I don't think he's going to feel as though he's underperformed today. If anything, I think he'll be exactly where he wanted to be. And as he joins me now in the interview room, Charles, congratulations on the P2 in qualifying and a 3rd place in the endurance race. It's been some time since we've seen you on the podium. You've been battling hard for it throughout the season, but this must feel as though the rewards have finally arrived.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to finally talk to you. I told myself I was only going to come into an interview. I had a good result, and it's great to be here talking to you. I've had a bit of a struggling, tough start to the season, should we say. Not really getting the pace, but today everything kind of came together. Managed to keep clear of any real big incidents and get through, which I was very happy about.
We all started off with a good qualifying session, and well, the lap came as well the latest in the day. We saw you put it on at the front row of the grid, P2 by 2.5 tenths off of Philipp Hammer's pole time. Looked as though you were able to capitalise on quite a bit of slipstream off of the pole sitter in the end. Just take us through the qualifying session and how it built up to that final ultimate lap.
Yeah, that's exactly right. My first few, I did 2 runs before, and the laps weren't really coming together. A few off tracks and a few lockups, not really getting the tyres right up to temperature. I had a banker and I was around about 10th, I believe. And I came to the last run and I saw Philipp Hammer just by him, and I thought, if there's one person I want to latch my car to, I thought it's him. He's currently leading. So kind of sat behind him, managed to gain a good second half in the straights, and then it all just came together quite well in the end. It's a track I do get on with quite well. I've done the endurance, the 24-hour round here before, so I know my way around fairly well, and I'm quite comfortable pushing. But it just kind of all came together at the end. It was a bit of an all or nothing last last ditch attempts, but I'm very happy to get up to second.
And then from that second spot on the grid, at race start, we saw it was a bit of a charge into the opening pair of corners with Haroldas Jotautas trying to make a move early. And he seemed to gain the upper hand, but the two of you very quickly, I think, developed a bit of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and you broke away from the rest of the field, albeit Philipp Hammer just disappeared off into the distance gradually.
Yeah, I mean, at the start, it was a bit chaotic. I saw Alex went off in front of me and kind of slowed down, which I think probably ruined his race for a fair amount, unfortunately for him. And by the end of the first lap, I saw that me and Haroldas was putting a bit of a gap to the guys behind who were battling hard. And I recognised at that point that Philipp's pace was probably a bit too good to fight with. So I thought if I can just stick with Haroldas, I've got a good chance of getting a good result. And I thought this is the time to get a nice clean result compared to potentially a bit more scrappy results previous in the season. I thought if I can just get to the end of the race, last few laps, then I can try and battle. And I tried, but in the end, I couldn't quite get past Haroldas. Threw everything at him, but yeah, he's up there in the championship battle for a reason. He's very, very handy driver.
Oh, indeed, but in the same vein, you're quite handy yourself around Le Mans. And, well, just as the race went on, of course, tyre wear's always been a big feature in our 30-minute feature races. But how was the tyre wear for yourself here over the 42 minutes?
Yeah, I was very aware of that. In my previous races, I've struggled a bit. So I was, especially through the Porsche curbs where you're putting the most load through the tyres, I was not pushing as much as maybe I could do. But as well as that, I think Le Mans kind of lends itself to having less tyre wear just because so much of it's flat out, as I'm sure you all saw. So it managed itself to a certain extent. I was a bit worried about that coming into the race. But yeah, maybe a bit of lifting, coasting into corners as well, just to not put too much pressure on the tyres under braking, because I was a bit concerned about fuel initially at the start and what my display was giving me. But obviously, so much slipstream kind of helps the fuel numbers ease my nerves a bit.
Oh, indeed, and in managing the car, of course, giving yourself the car in the best possible state to go hunting at the very end. And you talked about not quite being able to find the edge on Jotautas come the final lap. But was there any particular corner you had signalled out as, okay, this is where I'm going to get him? Or was it one of those, okay, I'll just see how close I get from corner to corner?
Well, I'd noticed in the previous laps coming out of the second chicane on the Mulsanne, I was maybe getting a better run than him. But obviously, that's kind of the shorter part of the straight. And also coming up through the Porsche curves, but unfortunately neither of these places are great overtaking zones, so I had to give a chance my arm down to Indianapolis, but he managed to hold it on the inside there and then swoop across. I did have a little go in the 4 chicanes right at the end of the lap, but I thought I'm not going to send it all in, all or nothing here and ruin both our races, so I thought kind of best to hold back there. He did have very good traction on a lot of the corners, which does definitely make it harder to pull alongside and get past.
Oh, indeed, and I think sensible in terms of not going for an all or nothing and bringing the car home in P3 for one of your best results of the season thus far. And the story continues in a week's time as we head to the UK for the Silverstone circuit. How are you feeling for the heart of British motorsport?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Silverstone's a track I get on with quite well. I've obviously got a lot of experience in iRacing and also different sims. It's a only race track I've probably been to see live racing myself as well. So hopefully some of that comes in to help. That could definitely be a race about saving tyres. Again, obviously, as there's a lot of long, medium to fast speed corners, so the front tyres will take really a pounding around there. So that's definitely something I'll be looking into this week, kind of seeing the best ways to negate that.
Well, Giles, we look forward to seeing how you get on at Silverstone and whether you can repeat the return to the podium. But just before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
It should be great to give a shout out to my friends and family and my girlfriend, of course, putting up with me in my very time-consuming and expensive hobby that is sim racing.
Oh, brilliant. Well, I'm sure they'll appreciate that just as much as we've appreciated you joining me in the interview room, Giles. It's been a pleasure. Congratulations once again on your fight to a podium finish at Le Mans, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in the UK next week.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for your great commentary. I really enjoyed watching the streams, and keep up the good work.
Will do. It's my pleasure.
Cheers.
All the best. that we're hearing there from Giles Phillips. A lovely fellow, I must say, and it's a pleasure to have interviewed him for the first time this season. And the Gold Class driver really putting together a fantastic performance today, not just in the race itself, but also in qualifying, and leaving it all to the last moment in a tactical ploy in order to be able to capitalise on Philipp Hammer's slipstream. And it put him on the front row of the grid. And after, in his own words, a bit of a chaotic opening lap where we did see a number of moves made through the opening corners, and of course the rise and then subsequent fall of Alex Peregrina in the run through the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, Phillips was able to settle on down, tuck in behind the Haroldas Jotautas, and the pair of them broke away. There will be a battle for P2 that would wait a very long time. A lot of tyre and fuel conservation went into the mix there, particularly trying to give himself as much tyre life as possible to go battling on the final laps. But it was a bit of traction advantage for Jotautas, plus also just having that lead position advantage, which always helps when you have track position. And that was the difference between the two of them. But I think the Phillips GP driver has had the taste now of the virtual champagne on the podium, and I get the feeling he'll be wanting more of it come Silverstone. So he's definitely going to be one to watch as he looks to take the fight to P6 in the Gold Class versus what is Ryan Walker in the championship. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our interviews for today. And well, you've heard from the trio, most recently from Giles Phillips in the Gold Class, the Phillips GP driver in the number 12. You also previously heard from David Biggerdike, the silver driver for DC Sim Racing in the 13, bringing on home the runner-up spot in the silver class. And also in between, we heard Ryan Walker in the Gold Class of Satellite Racing in the 95, enjoying a top 5 class finish and just batting on home to a P6 overall, just outside the top 5. But congratulations to all three of them for their performances, and of course a big thank you to them as well for joining me in the interview room. And we should mention once more, ladies and gentlemen, if any of them have caught your eye with regards to a driver of the day, don't forget to vote for your driver of the day. Votes close at midnight tonight, British Summertime or UTC +1, and we have put the link in the YouTube broadcast chat once again for you. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed the show today and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, perhaps you're sat there right now thinking the Porsche Cup 992 machine is a car you love and you want to be on the grid, or perhaps you want to know a little bit more about it and potentially want to sign up for a future season, or you just want to get a little bit more acclimatised and accommodated with UK Sim Racing, well, of course, you can go to our official website. That is at uksimracing.co.uk, and of course, you saw our website earlier in the broadcast today. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website, but perhaps you want to go to one of our social media platforms, you can of course find us on Twitter at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_, where you can keep up to date with all the latest escapades and exploits of the official UK Sim Racing esports teams, and also adverts for our upcoming leagues. Now, we would like to take a brief moment to give a big thank you to our affiliates, of which we start off there with Swellier Meadows Sim Racing Coaching, and the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist. Swellier Meadows Sim Racing Coaching can help you take your sim racing driving to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swellier Meadows has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swellier being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you are receiving coaching from the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment, aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Thirdly, we have Demon Tweaks, the provider of what is the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks can help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions in the virtual or the real world. We also have SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high quality sim racing related hardware, and as a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports, and with in-house engineering and production facilities which combine Dutch design and high-end craftsmanship, SimLab is the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. And lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including not limited to one-click shopping, Amazon Web Services, and Amazon Alexa. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll set the date, because in a week's time on Thursday, the 4th of May, the story continues as we charge into the second half of the season. And of course, it's rounds 10 and 11 at the Silverstone circuit in the United Kingdom, with a wide open track surface and the high to medium speed apexes and corner to corner. It's going to be fast. It's going to be furious. It's going to be a return to the sprint and feature format that you all know and love. And we'll watch the Le Mans Special has definitely delivered today an endurance round. Who will be able to endure the test that Britain has to offer at the heart of motorsport there? Well, we'll have to wait and see. But until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.